Hello and welcome to Fire in the Belly. Today we have myself, Mighty Pete, and we're joined by Peter Duke. Good afternoon, Peter.
Good afternoon, Pete. Yes, how are you? Keeping well?
Oh, keeping excellent. I must say this whole COVID thing is interesting times. Let's say interesting times. So,
It
tell me,
certainly is. It's making us having to think out of the box a wee bit, I think.
well, that's it. Stretch our wings a bit. So, tell me, Peter, who are you and what do you do?
My name is Peter Duke, and I describe myself as a mobile refuse receptacle cleansing operative, which most people wouldn't have a clue what that is, but it's basically I wash people's wheelie bins, and I've been doing that for 27 years now.
Oh wow, that's fantastic. It's a great way. It's a great business. Why not?
Well, yeah. It's that long ago now. I can't really figure out how I really thought about it. I think it was along the lines of that people get their cars washed to get windows, gardens. They have housekeepers coming in. They even have people come out to their house to clean their cars. And I looked around and thought, well, there's nobody doing bins. And I think that's really how it started, from a small seed. Went into my head and I looked into it. Don't think my parents were too pleased about having given me a grammar school education. And then having to go out and wash people's wheelie bins. But I managed to convince them that there was a mileage in it, shall we say. And my aunt at the time mentioned that she knew somebody who got her bins washed. So immediately my mother's attitude changed slightly because somebody knew somebody. And I managed to get that gentleman's name and the details and contacted him and ended up in Staffordshire for a week with him. And basically helped me, guide me, and I came back and set up and haven't looked back since, really.
Oh wow, I'm looking forward to hearing more about this. So tell me, before we get into it, what does Fire in the Belly mean to you?
I've been thinking about that since we discussed doing this interview. Fire in the belly. A really difficult question to answer, to be honest. I think my fire in the belly is to take opportunity, as I call it, when it comes along. If a door opens for you, go through it, because you have no idea what other doors are going to open for you. But always remembering to leave that door open behind you, because you might want to go back. So leave options open, I suppose. And the fire in the belly is, for me, is always looking for something new, always looking for something to challenge myself. And that's what's always guided me through my process, is taking the opportunities. If that sort of answers your question.
Yeah, it does. I mean, it's a different things for different people. A lot of people say it's passion, but I love it there. Taking opportunities is always a good one.
Yeah, I found it, well, certainly guided me in many different ways. And if I hadn't said yes to those doors in front of me, then I wouldn't have had half the fun and meet half the people I have. So I've been very lucky.
Oh, well, brilliant. So tell me this, take us right back then. So where are you from originally and where were you born and family?
I am born and bred in Belfast. I was born not in the house in the Stranmillis Road. I think it was Belfast City Hospital. But yes, my parents lived on the Stranmillis Road in Belfast, where my grandfather had a confectionery and tobacconists just at the top of Cloring Gardens. If anybody knows that area, it's now Bob and Bert's coffee shop on the Stranmillis Road. And that's great fun, because it means that I can go there, sit in the upstairs room in Bob and Bert's, have a cup of coffee, and remember having Christmases in that very room, which is great fun. Most people can't do that. So that's some fun I have. And I can bring friends with me and we can reminisce about, this is where we used to sit, and the fire was in the corner there. But yes, I was brought up in the Stranmillis Road above the shop. And my mother and father worked in the shop, although my father was a teacher when my grandfather passed. So it was handed on to us. And I went to Inchmarlow, which is the proprietary school of INST, or Royal Belfast Academical Institution. And my father also taught at that school, which was interesting. But I think the headmaster had the wit not to put us in the same class for too long. I think my dad only ever taught me when he had to do a substitute teacher for my original teacher, because I'm sure it could have got quite volatile at times, possibly. Not easy to teach your son. So yes, that I was there. I must say I enjoyed the confectionery shop. It was very nice being able to get access to sweets, and I'm afraid my sweet of choice then was Lions Midget Gems, which I still have a weakness for, I must say. So I haven't outgrown that, and I don't wish to. So yeah.
Oh, it's interesting. So did you, out of interest, what subject did your father teach?
He was primary school, so he covered most of the shall I say, the curriculum that we taught. So it was always primary school, and I ended up then being vice principal of Cliftonville Primary School in Belfast, on Cliftonville Road, and then headmaster of his own school, which was lovely for him in Ballyhenry in Glengormley. And he was the headmaster there for 25 odd years or more, and loved it. And the teachers and the staff loved him. You know, he just has a great way with people, and real gentleman, and a real nice guy. You know, I'm lucky to be his son, to be honest.
Oh wow, fair play. So it's obviously, I mean, personable characteristics then that sort of getting on with people, really, was it?
Yes, I think very much so. He doesn't suffer fools gladly, but it would take a lot of effort to make him bark, shall we say. But a real character. Like, for instance, one of the nice things I fondly remember is that Dad would go to take us to school in the morning after opening the shop, then come home in the afternoon and do another couple of hours in the shop, and then in the evenings go to Queen's University to do an economics degree at night. Now, how on earth he ever did that, bringing up 3 kids as well? I just had so much admiration for the man to be able to do that. And he got an honours degree in economics through it all. So an amazing achievement. And it was nice for me as a young schoolboy to be at his graduation at Queen's, which was lovely. It was a great memory. So, yeah.
Well, just what sort of encouraged him to go back and do economics, do you know?
It's not, I have no real idea, because I don't think it had much bearing on his teaching. I never really asked him, which is probably terrible of me not to ask that question. And now that he's in a nursing home, his memory's not the greatest, and I honestly don't think I get the answer I would be looking for, even if I asked him now. Genuinely, I don't know. I really don't know, because economics is not an easy subject by any means. You know, it's so involved. It's mathematics. It's got equations. It's got everything involved in it. You know, working out the populations, and it's quite a complicated. And to take it to a degree at university was, yeah. You know, there are easier degrees that I would imagine you could take on in economics. That's for sure.
Absolutely,
So,
yeah. No, interesting.
yeah,
So,
sadly, I don't even know if there's anybody alive I could ask. Yeah, yes, sadly, that's one question. Never. I won't probably get the answer to.
there you go. So then talk to us about your mother then. She was working in the shop full time then?
Yes, Mum used to work as secretary for a very large construction company in Northern Ireland, H&J Martin, and she would have been a PA, I think, to the director for that for a while. And then I suppose when we came along, she wanted to be with us, so basically took time off from that. And then I suppose my grandfather had passed away, so the shop then needed more care and more attention, and my parents would have moved into that direction more. So that's when Mum probably would have given up work. But I was so young at the time too, I can't remember exactly when that time would have been. I was born in 58, so early 60s. Mum would have probably given up and started looking after us and looking after the shop as Dad went out to work. And then eventually we had a housekeeper to help in the shop, and also help in the house with us as well. Mrs. Mulholland, lovely lady. So going back, Mum would have been in the shop for most of my lifetime, you know, that I can remember.
I mean, obviously hard-working parents, both. I mean, your dad sort of almost doing like a triple shift. Your mum as well, looking after you guys, working as well, if not PAing. So hard-working family.
Very, very hard. And the difficulty was the shop never closes, especially when you live in it. That was the other problem. I remember many a time, would you believe, on Christmas Day, the side door, the shop was 46 and we were 48. And even to this day, I can still remember the telephone number, 666-214, Belfast 666-214. Crazy how you remember these things, by the way. And I even remember on Christmas Day the side door knocking, and a customer asking could they get a couple of bottles of lemonade because they'd run out of mixers for their party. And again, you got to think, if you say no, there was 3 other shops on the confectioner shop on the road, and you think to yourself, you know, will you lose that customer if you say no? What do you do? So living above a business is never a good idea.
Well, okay. So you literally were immersed into it at the same time.
Shocking, yeah. And all the wee crazy things that happened to, like, there was a back door to the entry below our house, and the back door would have been about 4 feet above the entry, just the way it was built. And it happened to be that way. And we'd leave the back door open for the bin men every now and again to come and take the bins. And next thing we found out that the local not thugs, but characters, shall we say, young characters, would be coming around on a regular basis to return their lemonade bottles, because there was two and six, yeah, two and sixpence, half a crown, I think it was, or no, was it sixpence? Sorry, sixpence. That's what it was. Old 6D, for returning your lemonade bottle. And of course, what they were doing was nipping in the backyard when the back door was open and stealing the empty bottles to bring them back round to get their money on until my father worked out why they were coming in so often. And we managed to stop that. But yeah, things like that would have happened in the shop. But there were some characters coming in. We had a lot of characters coming in for a cigarette in those days, because my dad would have opened a packet of 10 or whatever and sold them singly with a penny book of matches. And the local boys who maybe didn't have a lot of money would have been very happy getting a cigarette and way off they went.
Oh, wow. So did you guys ever work in the shop, or were you kept separate?
No, we would have done it later on as we got a bit older, and we would have helped out, serving the odd time. But most of the time, yeah, we would have done it, not a great deal, because there was always somebody there to do it. But yes, we'd help stock the shelves and do the odd. There would be a bell that would ring in the back of the house where we were sitting, and that would let us know there was somebody coming in, so we could nip down. There was a doorway, if my memory serves right, and about 2 steps down into the shop area, and that the counter was just in front of that, and the ice cream and nothing. The cigarettes were behind, and yeah, so it was sort of a U shape to the front. From my memory, it's hard to remember back because we left there in about 72, I think thereabouts. So it's going back a bit.
Mm. Oh, wow. So I mean, what were you? You were up to about the age of 14 then, if I've done my math right?
Thereabouts, yes, yeah. I think that would have been there. Yeah.
So, what was the shop called, out of interest?
It was called Anderson's, which is my middle name. My name is Peter Anderson Duke. So I was called after my mother's side of the family, and my brother, who passed away sadly a couple of years ago, his middle name was Winder, after my father's maiden name. So my dad is Robert Winder Duke, and my brother was Philip Winder. And then of course my sister then came along, and I think to give her third name, they decided rather than have a row, I think, between the two families, she was just called Pamela Jane. So she's not related to, her name doesn't relate to any of the families. So I think that was to keep the peace, probably.
That's it, when you
families can be like,
Well, that's it. When you get to the third one, you're like, yeah, okay, unless you can do something that's going to be even, let's just leave it,
Exactly. So I think that's how my sister got Pamela Jane, although she's referred to as Jane. So.
Oh, great. So is there much of a spread between you guys?
Not a great deal. There would have been 2 years, I suppose, roughly between each of us. I'm the eldest. My brother would have been the middle one, and then my sister's the youngest. So I'm the one who had to take all the flack, as they say, growing up.
Oh, per you.
I know. Broad shoulders to take it. It's okay.
Oh, I love it. So curious then. So talk to me then about school. So how was schooling for you in your younger years?
Primary school was fine. I probably wouldn't have been the most studious character at school. I seem to be able to apply myself more now than I ever did at school. I didn't see the point of school. I was more manual character, enjoyed art, enjoyed making things and doing things. So grammar school probably didn't fit in with my abilities maybe as much, but still, I'm not knocking it. I greatly appreciate the time I spent at Inst and the people I met and the people I still know. Enjoyed my rugby and my training, and I left after O-level because I knew O-levels were a step too far for me, really. So I got out into, as I always say, the university of life very quickly at the age of 16. But I must say, I enjoyed my time at Inst and enjoyed the people I met and the contacts and things. It's I suppose it's snobby to say it does something for you, but it certainly it gives you it gives you something out of life. It definitely does.
Mm. So tell me this, what did the school reports say? What would we have seen?
Could do better. And I think that's them being polite, because again, the problem I had was everybody knew my dad. So I wouldn't say I was a marked man, but all the staff would have known of me through my father. So now the name Duke was very readily accessible, unfortunately. And I wouldn't have applied myself greatly in school. And many a teacher, I remember one of my teachers, whose nickname was Barney Rubble, because he looked a wee bit like Barney Rubble, but his name was actually Ian Ritchie. And actually, they owned the Richie's Chip Shop on I think it's the Castlereagh Road there, which has changed hands several times, but they had that. And he said, Duke, if you pass your O-level physics exam, he says, I will either walk up the Shankill with a tricolour on my back or down the falls with a Union Jack. The choice will be yours. And funny enough, I did get my physics O-level, but I never bought the flag for him, which I should have done, as a present as I left school,
Oh, love it, love it. So, what subjects? Is there any particular subjects that stood out for you, or?
Like art, I got an A in my art at O-level, so that was my crowning glory. I enjoyed English and maths a wee bit. Chemistry was all right, and if I had applied myself, I don't consider myself to be unintelligent in any way. I just didn't have that. I don't know, how do you describe it? Keenness to learn or keenness to read or do anything like that. Whereas now I quite enjoy reading. I quite enjoy learning, I look things up as quick as I can. If there's something catches my attention, I'm looking up and researching it on Google, which is great to have that access now, which we wouldn't have had so readily in school. Again, the fun of looking up something now is so much easier than it would have been to trawl through 20 books, maybe to find it back then. So I think, in a way, technology has made education possibly easier and more enjoyable in certain ways than it would have been. I'm not making that as an excuse by any means, because it's all we had back then, it's all I knew. But certainly I didn't apply myself, and my reports would have been could do better, feeling not doing well, can't keep attention, his attention span would be short, nice guy but doesn't try hard or something like that. So I think that would sum me up pretty quickly.
Nice, I like it. So, what was keeping you busy then? I mean, was it outside of school activities, or what was your thing?
Yeah, well, rugby would have been my main sport, which I thoroughly enjoyed playing. I suppose I would have been a reasonable player. I was lucky enough to play with some great guys who ended up going on to bigger and better things than me, certainly. But funnily enough, they were never selected above me at school. So if I maybe stayed on to do A-levels, my rugby career might have been totally different to what it was. Because when you leave school at 16, you drop off the radar very quickly where rugby is concerned, unless you join a senior club, and then you're not going to get really noticed. So unless you've played on the first 15 in the school's cup or something, you're lost to that. And again, at the age, there's no way I would have done that because I didn't stay on. But one of the guys I fondly remember, a guy called David Irwin, ended up captaining Ireland and going on to bigger and better things. And then, of course, Keith Crossan, who played on the wing as well. Colin Patterson, I played with at Estonians for a while, a couple of times, who was on the British Lions and Ireland scrum half for many years. So I've been very lucky to be associated with guys like that and haven't played with them, and even considered calling them friends, which is lovely.
Oh, wow. So what position did you play?
I played most in the backs, really. A scrum half would have been the one I enjoyed most because you were involved. Full back and on the wing, certainly at school level, you could be quite lonely. You mightn't always get involved in the game, but as you get up in more senior ranks, you're certainly involved all the time. So I played scrum half, out half. I played centre, and never fast enough for the wing, and full back a couple of times. But again, full back's quite a quick position to be in. So scrum half, out half would have been the two main options, which I thoroughly enjoyed.
Oh, well. And tell me, did your brother and sister follow a similar path to yourself, or what way did they go?
No, my sister she went to university. She was the brainy one of the family. My brother and I didn't. Both left after O-level. My brother was an Estonian for a short period of time, and I jokingly say he left before he was kicked out, and he then went and joined Methody. So that was a rivalry within the household, very much so. So he went on to Methody, and I think he enjoyed it immensely because there were girls. So he always seemed to enjoy that side. He was always seemed to be attracted to lots of women. I don't know why. I couldn't see it myself, but I suppose that's what brothers do. They don't see that. But and then he would have been very much a hockey man, and a very, very strong hockey person. In fact, he was Collegian's fixture secretary for 25 years, which is quite undertaking. I don't think I've ever heard of anybody do that at a club for that length of time before. And of course, because of that, he was so well known throughout hockey circles. and he was coaching. He coached girls hockey, typical him, girls hockey, of course. Yeah, he coached hockey to quite a high level. He played to quite a high level too, and but he had a devil may care attitude. I would have loved. Things came naturally to him in sport for some reason, and like he had a trial for Ulster cricket at one point, I think, and unbeknownst to him, he didn't realise the guys were there to check him out, and he just sat in the boundary, not showing much interest, and then I don't think he did get selected, but it was just like water off a duck's back to him. He didn't worry too much, and things like that. But it did come easy to him, and hockey did as well. And then he was also on the fringes of Olympic hockey. He had got an opportunity to go off with a junior squad for Ireland, under 21. And then they were talking about possibly the next stage of that for him would have been a junior Olympic trip or something. So, but unfortunately, he died and in a tragic accident, and that meant that he couldn't fulfill that, sadly. So, but he was so well respected that there was more than 5 people turned up for his funeral, and that was the day the hurricane in Belfast was a couple of years ago. So for people to travel from Dublin all over, that shows you how much they liked him. It was amazing to see that turnout. And eventually, the Collegians very kindly put him up for the Belfast Telegraph Awards and put him up for the Unsung Hero Award. And he was the first one ever to win it posthumously a couple of years ago. So I went and received that in his honour, which was a lovely thing to do on his behalf. When he passed away, he was only 56. So, a lot of life ahead of him. But so I now have to do that living for him.
Well, it's always a tragedy.
It's not easy, yeah.
So tell me, 16 years of age, O levels under your belt. Where are we off to?
Or a couple anyway, shall we say. There was a couple more done after that, but anyway, we won't go into that in too much detail. Thank God nobody asked too much about my previous record nowadays when I'm working and things, so we push that under the carpet and hide it as best we can. I think I've graduated better in the University of Life probably than I would have done at the University of Schooling or anything like that. But anyway, it hasn't done me any harm, and I can still laugh at it and hold my head up, Yes, well, I left school, and because of my drawing skills, I'd always fancied being an architect. So a job came up. In those days, careers basically were a teacher who maybe was, I think our careers teacher was a chemistry or physics teacher who did the careers on the side, so I would say. Whereas nowadays it's taken an awful lot more seriously, Sort of the question would be, what do you like? I don't really know what I want to do at 16. Well, what do you fancy doing? I don't really know. And so, I fancy architect. Well, here's a guy you might go and see, or go into the job centre and go this route. So it wasn't great advice, but I found a job somewhere. I think it was the job centre, actually. I went into, and there was a job looking for a trainee draftsman. So I applied and got it, and I started there. The pricey sum, I think £5 a week at the beginning, and started learning or doing a small drawing office assistant. So basically going over drawings, checking them, checking the measurements and stuff, and going out with the other architect and doing measurements and helping him do measurements. So that was entertaining. But I decided quite quickly that, like, at university, the architecture degree is long enough as it is. It's about 7 years, one of the longest you can do. And I thought to myself, if I'm going to be a drawing office assistant, well, then to get anywhere as an architect, it's going to take me a lifetime before. So I looked for other opportunities, and the next one came along was working as a junior sprog, as they call it back in those days, for Isaac Agnew's as a salesman. So, and the benefit of that, this would have been a couple of years. So my salary had gone from 5 to about 10, I think, in the architect's office. And but Agnew's were offering 20. So, whoa, double my salary. And I thought, yeah, sounds good to me. As a young guy, at rugby and all the rest of the things I was doing at about 17 or 18. So £20 a week was a big difference. And also the possibility of getting into sales and selling cars with the commission side of it. So I joined Agnew's as they say, a junior sprog. And my job then was basically to de-wax cars, because in those days, any car, and I think they still do, new cars coming in on transporters would have been covered in wax to protect them. So we would de-wax them with a steam cleaner and clean them up and have them ready for the showroom and the sales team. And so I started off there and worked my way up into sales slowly. And then they decided, I suppose with my background and where I came from, that I would be good to send down to the BMW and Ferrari in Donegal Pass. So, and most of the sales team in Lisburn Road, where I was, saw that as a promotion because you were selling higher priced cars, so your commission was like that. So yes, it was quite a feather in my cap to get promoted to the BMW side of things, which I loved, and Ferrari, and sold them for a while. And yeah, I must say I enjoyed my time there. Back then, it was a bit. I wouldn't fancy being in sales now because it's so much target orientated. Whereas back then, it wasn't just so pressurized. That it was quite enjoyable, and we had some great crack with the rest of the guys in the team. Meeting for coffee, having the excuse that we had a demonstration to do with a client, and we end up in Three Bears in the Ormer Road for a quick coffee, a team meeting, as it were, as we called it, and then back into work again. I don't think you get away with that nowadays in car sales,
That's great. So, I mean, well, to go from the de-waxing to the BMW garage and the Ferrari garage, that's quite a shift across, really.
Well, it wasn't. It maybe wasn't that quick. It was probably over a year or two. I moved into car sales into Volkswagen Audi, which was on the Lisburn Road, and the old original Beetle was still around. So that shows you how long ago it was. So I worked my way there in the sales team, and then the opportunity came for a sales rep to go, and they decided I would be the one to move down to a small showroom in Donegal Pass, which did basically Ferrari. The showroom would have been very small. I suppose it would have been an old couple of terraced houses originally knocked into a business at the time. But there, and then they moved to the big showroom in Bedford Street, which was nice. And unfortunately, there was a gentleman I had worked with in Lisburn Road, a sales manager who didn't particularly get on with. And when I moved to BMW, it was great because he wasn't there. So I was able to get on with the job, and then moved to BMW, and lo and behold, he was moved there as well. So it got to the stage where it was better for me to move, shall we say, because he wasn't going to be moved. The sadly thing about him, he was an amazing salesman. Could sell snow to the Eskimos, no problem. But the difficulty, he didn't quite have the idea how to manage people. And he should have been kept as a salesman because he was earning more than some of the directors in the cars he was selling. And they thought with that experience, then he'd be better as a salesman. And really, he wasn't. Sadly, they just picked the wrong guy. And it ended up me having to go because we just at loggerheads. It wasn't a good scenario, shall we say.
Would you have been a little bit headstrong by chance?
No. Well, I explain exactly what happened. What happened was I had sold a car to a very successful business, and one of the directors came in one day and bought a car off me. It just happened to be that I was there that day. That was all. 528i BMW worth 20,000 back in about the late 70s, about 78. That was a lot of money. And so all the paperwork done, everything organised, and he wanted the car on the Friday to take his family away to Donegal for the weekend because obviously he had a house up there. And he had bought BMWs off the company before, but not with me. So, he was reputable enough. And again, he was a director of a very successful company in Belfast. So I arrived out on the Friday afternoon, ready to do the deal. And he handed me a cheque for 2,500 or something, which basically was the deposit. I said, whoa, what's this? He said, that's the deposit. I said, but hang on, I'm here for the 20 grand. I can't let this car out. Can't take that cheque back. And he says, but the finance is arranged through our company. I said, well, nobody mentioned finance to me. So I was in a situation, do I take the car away with me, knowing his family and all ready to go to Donegal, practically in the office waiting to go practically, and possibly lose that sale? Or knowing that this was a reputable businessman, do I let him have the car, put the check in the thing, and then check up on the finance when I get back? So I made that decision to go ahead, didn't phone up, didn't do checking because I thought, hang on, I'm an adult here, supposedly, make that decision. So I made that decision, get back, and this particular gentleman asked, had everything be sorted? I said, yes, it's all fine, all sorted, no problem. Got on the phone and checked about the finance. Typical of my luck, the guy who dealt with that particular business's finance was off for the day and wouldn't be in until Monday. So I couldn't even check if it had been passed and okayed. So a panic over the weekend. Monday came and my boss had done some checking himself and realised that I'd only received a deposit. So he basically suspended me for a week instantly. Didn't even give me the chance to go in and check that everything was okay. And it was phoned the guy back. I said, look, I'm now out of work because I took that risk for you, blah, blah, blah. He got on the blower, things and all the rest. So at that point, didn't argue with the guy. I just felt it was a bit hard to be sent home for a week. And I don't believe anybody in the company that it ever happened to before. You know, I think it could have been handled differently, but that's not, I wasn't the boss, so it wasn't up to me. And so that was the final straw. I just thought, no, he's not going to be happy with me at anything I do. He's going to be watching me like a hawk. And I just thought this makes more sense to be an adult. You got to make, and I don't think, I suppose as the letter of the law, I did wrong. But would I have been also wrong if I'd lost that sale? You know, what trouble would I got in then? So possibly I made the wrong decision, but I still stand over it thinking that I knew the guy. There's no way he was going to steal the car. You know, that wasn't going to happen. So what's the worst could happen was, the finance would take another day or two to come in. So I took that risk and it ended up with me moving on, shall we say.
Very, very different times too. I mean, what age were you at that time?
What was that? 70, 20?
Yeah.
So again, it's a lot to take on for a young guy.
Yeah.
I think being 20 back then is a lot younger than being 20 today, if that makes sense. I think, or maybe I was more naive back then than a 20-year-old would be today, if that makes sense.
But they're very, very different times too, really. It's, as you say, 20-year-olds now the internet exposes everyone to a lot more as well.
Absolutely. Well, it would have been easy for me to send a quick text message to ask, is this okay? Which I couldn't do back then. Can I get on the phone? Can I make a phone call? Yeah, I possibly made the wrong choice, but I still stand over it thinking that, I had to stand on my own 2 feet in my life and make a choice. And I think I made the right one.
It was interesting there. You were able to call off the car, the make and models instantly there. Is that to be a bit of a fascination with cars?
Well, I suppose it's stuck in my head. You see that particular one. Up until not that long ago, I remember one of the first Volkswagen Golfs I sold, and every now and again I bump into the lady. She wouldn't have a clue. I live at Trinity, and every now and again she lived up that way, and every now and again, now that, as you say, that would have been 77, and I still bump into that lady who I recognise, and every now and again I say, "Do you remember the Golf I sold you?" And she, "Oh my God, it's you," But I still remember that lady. So you do remember some of the, I suppose, the first one you sold, the first Volkswagen. I can still remember the first Ferrari. I sold a GTX, sort of Targa top, and my commission was £113. So, that was a lot of money back then. So I still remember a red one. And I remember the character I sold it to, who's now, he was a club owner in Belfast at the height of the Troubles. An awkward gentleman, shall we say. And he's now an evangelist in America, which is I have my doubts as to why he's an evangelist, but we won't go into that.
I was going to say, selling Ferraris and even high-end BMWs, I'm sure you must have met some amazing people.
Yes, I met quite a lot of successful business people in Belfast. Met some strange characters too. I didn't actually meet him. It wasn't my sale, but I remember when I was in Lisburn Road, where the new, the co-op is now in Lisburn, not just down from the fire station. That used to be Isaac Agnew's showroom. The co-op sits a bit back, or it's Marks and Spencer, I think now, sits a bit back from the road. Well, that was our showroom. And I remember a gypsy came in with his wife and family, and the car could only be described as the worst ashtray you could ever imagine. From back to front and everywhere, basically, was just a rubbish tip. And of course, nobody would talk to him, but this one particular guy started to talk to him, and he came in with cash in carrier bags to buy a brand new Mercedes. And so the car was ready and prepared, and the wife and the family and all came, dropped theirs off, and the wife disappeared. Couldn't figure out where she had gone. She had gone down to the mechanics area of our showroom, where all the repairs and all the preparations were done. Disappeared into the changing rooms there and washed her hair. Came back up with her hair tied back and still dripping. Received the keys to the new car and drove off. And that was it. So yes, we've had some car. I remember another situation where I was selling an XJS Jag, a red one. Oh no, sorry, no, I was taking that in as a trade-in. XJS Jag, and he was buying a henna red, which was the light reddy coloured BMW Sports with cream leather upholstery, really nice looking car. And he was in the florist business. He then moved into chip shops around Belfast. I won't say the name because you know who it was. But he turned up in a carrier bag of cash. And I think the car was 21,000 and we allowed him 10,000 for his XJ and the balance was about 11 and a half or something. And it took me a long time to count 11,500 pounds in cash, you know. So things like that. And another one I fondly remember at the height of the Troubles was delivering a Volkswagen van, I think, and picking up a beat up old car, or was it, yeah, something like that, across the Limestone Road or some way across town. I had delivered sort of late on. I think it was about 8 o'clock at night. So I was given cash as the balance, which was about 7,000 or 8,000 pounds. So I had to drive all the way back in this second-hand beat-up car through roadblocks, through all the things to hide the Troubles, with 7,500 pounds stashed under the seat. And I was just hoping that I wouldn't get stopped and try and explain why I had 7,000 pounds worth of cash under the seat of the car, you know. So things like that through the height of the Troubles, which you never thought about. But looking back now, yeah, you know, it wasn't the most sensible things to do, but you did it.
I'm sure there weren't too many anti-money laundering checks going on there. And
I can't say, no, I just couldn't say anything like that.
Tell me this, were you driving yourself?
Yes, that was the nice thing, because the couple of the teachers because our showrooms, you know, I was driving through town and stuff to deliver cars up to Mollusk, where we had a place in North Hard Street in Belfast too, was another place we had a showroom. So I was driving cars all over the place. And it was great whenever I was able to toot the horn in a Porsche or a Ferrari at one of my teachers as I drove past, who had said, "Duke will never amount to anything," you know. Unbeknownst to them, they wouldn't have known it was mine or not, but still I was able to toot and wave in a suit, looking the part, as I say, driving past. So that gave me great pleasure.
Love it. So you moved on then from Isaac News. Then where were you off to then?
There were several jobs in between, because I'd really, for quite a long time, I didn't really know what I wanted. I think the sales then had annoyed me in that what I found was that you learned all these courses, but like I went on several BMW sales courses, which were brilliant. But the trouble was when you came back to the showroom, there was nobody there to put you through what you learned. There was nobody to say, right, let's put into practice. So you were very much on your own. And you were always pandering to the guy above if you didn't get on. So it took me a while to find out else what I wanted. So I ended up in kitchen sales for a while. I think that goes back to my drawing office days. I ended up designing for a very expensive German kitchen company called Pog and Paul, which I think are still going. But, you know, back then, this was 83, thereabouts. I remember designing a kitchen for a company, the director of a company called Farm Fed Chickens, based up in Portrush. And at the time, his house backed on to one of the greens on the Royal Portrush. So a nice big house, just beside a forest. I remember it very well. I could take you to the house. And I designed the kitchen in there, and it was £26,000. Now, you imagine in 1983, the equivalent of that must be 100,000 today. Like, it wouldn't be far off it. So that was astronomical. And that was fun, because in those days, all the drawings had to be done by hand. There was no CAM-CAD like they have today. There was no pushing a button with dimensions. Up comes three-dimensional pictures. We were doing all our drawings, three-dimensional drawings, you know, doing them from different aspects so the customer could see what it would look like from the kitchen window, what it would look like from the dining room door or the back door. So that was 3 drawings that had to be done, all in perspective. But obviously there had to be a cut-off time as to the amount of drawings you could do. And of course, if somebody wanted a new drawer front, that meant we had to change the drawing, to change the drawer front or the worktop. Or if they wanted instead of a cupboard, they wanted a 3-drawer unit, we then had to go back to the drawing and take out the 3-drawer unit and put in a cupboard, or vice versa. So that was time consuming, whereas now you just push a button. But it was great fun as well. Great fun doing that and meeting again lovely people. And I think so far the thread from what I've been doing is people. You know, that's, if you work with people and people like you, well, that's 90% of the sale, you know, and that's what I found.
Would you say, was it the sales side you enjoyed, or was it the actual doing side? I mean, which was more your thing?
I suppose I enjoyed the sales side. I enjoyed meeting the people. And I suppose the part I didn't enjoy was the fact that you'd put all that work in and they could still say no, because it might have gone for a slightly cheaper kitchen. Or again, we were the top of the tree. Like we were high end, so there's not many people wanting to put £26,000 kitchens into houses, So, and we did have a cheaper range called Gold Rife, but again, that was because we opened a showroom in Abbey Centre, and again, I often think you need to open showrooms where your catchment is. You're better opening probably a showroom like Poggenpool near the Boucher Road, where you've got, or the Antrim Road or the Malone Road, where you have that clientele. But Abbey Centre wouldn't have been the clientele really for a lot of £26,000 kitchens. So that was a struggle there, and eventually it closed down because they just weren't getting the business. But I enjoyed that. I enjoyed meeting the people, and I enjoyed the drawing side most immensely. And then I moved from that into insurance for a while, which I enjoyed because I knew that whenever I left somebody's house, I'd probably left them in a better condition than when I arrived. So that was always a very pleasing part of it. And I worked in petrol stations. I'd worked for Harry Corrie, which was a friend of, again, my father had taught him in Inchmarlow. So the connections that I've had through grammar school and my father have been, that's opened doors. And again, we'll go back to my thing of taking the opportunity when it comes. And that was my first sort of big opportunity, because I was working with Harry Corrie delivering clothing, and that was good fun too. There was no pressure. It was just working with Willie and his father. And one great story I had, the father of Harry Corrie, John, was it John? Or I can't remember, but Mr. Corrie anyway, he started the whole business off because he went to skips and found skips of stuff being thrown out, said, hang on, we could sell that, old curtain remnants and things. And basically he was buying off cuts of stuff and selling in the shop. Very clever. Just finding something that somebody wanted and selling it. That was what he was doing. And then I expanded to them in the big business they have now. But his father didn't suffer fools gladly. And I remember Willie was telling us that the VAT man was due to come into the shop in Royal Avenue. Now, the VAT man wouldn't be something that Mr. Corrie would have appreciated very much, shall we say. So the staff were warned, whatever you do, don't tell my dad. So find this suited gentleman in a briefcase came in, and Mr. Corrie was there. And he had an awful habit of saying to the customers when they come in, what do you think of that there? Oh, I love it, but what do you think of the price? Oh, it's too dear. And immediately knocked down the price. If the customer felt it was too dear, he'd knock it down to 50% of the price it was. Dear knows what it cost, but he didn't care as long as the customer was happy. So this gentleman in a suit came in and he kept asking to the staff, who's that? Who is that guy? Oh, he's here to see Willie. It's okay. Don't worry. It's sorted. And so he went off to another shop and then came back out half an hour later, and this guy was still waiting. He said, what is this guy waiting for? Staff said, it's okay, Mr. Corrie. Please don't worry. So he footed about the shop, moving tick price tags about again, causing mayhem. And eventually he just went over and said, excuse me, sir, can I ask what you're waiting for? He says, yes, I'm the VAT man. I'm here to see what. He grabbed his briefcase and the VAT man by the backside and threw him out of the shop. And Willie panicked for about 3 days later, thinking he was going to be arrested or there was going to be a big fine. But whatever way it happened, it got sorted. But yeah, so that was one of the great stories I had there. But working for them, a friend of mine from the rugby club, who again knew Willie and all the connections, which were great. But working there, a guy called Ed Logan stopped me one day in town and said, Peter, I have an interview for you. And I said, what? I hadn't a clue what he was talking about. Never talked to me about any interview. He said, one of my contacts is the manager of the Liverpool Building Society in Belfast, and they're looking for an assistant manager. I just burst out laughing. And I said a few expletives and bleep, bleep, bleep. What bleep, bleep would they want to bleep, bleep interview me for? And he said, please, look, I've set it up. I've told them about you. And I said, well, look, Ed, out of courtesy to you for going to that, I'll certainly go, but please don't hold your breath. There'll be nothing comes of this. With my background and my education and everything else, there's just no chance. So went for the interview, and short story, I ended up in Liverpool to the head office where I was interviewed by the head man and the area manager. And by the end of the day, I was back home as the assistant manager of the Liverpool Building Society. So quite a change from being a delivery boy for Harry Corrie to, within a week or two of that, assistant manager of the Liverpool Building Society, and asking me what paper I wanted every morning with my morning coffee and so forth, driving a 1600 GL Capri, which was the company car. It had been the previous managers, and just simply I got it as the company car. And at the age of, I don't know what age, I would have been 25 maybe. So quite an opportunity. But again, that's going back to that door, as I say, taking that opportunity. When that door opened, taking the opportunity and seeing where it led. I honestly didn't. Once I got on that plane to Liverpool, I was not believing I was going to. My parents very kindly bought me a nice overcoat, a briefcase, and everything to look the part, and a new suit so that I looked the part. And to this day, I don't know what they saw in me, but they saw something. So, and it wasn't an easy job, I can tell you, because we were selling. My job was to sell investment opportunities to solicitors, accountants, who in those days would have been handling clients' money from settlements of estates or settlement of houses, and rather than leave it with them, they maybe put it in a building society account for a while to earn a bit of interest. So my job was to sell our products to the likes of them to get investment in. But again, we were 2 or 3% lower than the Halifax or the Nationwide, so we were really up against it. But I managed to get business in, and unfortunately, the company then pulled out of Northern Ireland and became the Birmingham Midshires. And only didn't open in Northern Ireland anymore. So again, that was me looking for other employment again. But great opportunity, and it's a nice to have on my CV.
You seem to have risen to the top of any sort of sector you've gone to, whether it be Isaac News, you get into the Ferraris, and you're even the kitchen. You don't just go for a plain old kitchen; you go for the top end German.
Yeah. Looking back on it, I never thought of that. Yeah, I don't know why. I just, again, it's that door opened. That was the company that was looking for somebody. So when I sat there, the guy said, "Can you do a perspective drawing?" I had some idea what a perspective drawing was, so I did a hand drawing there in front of him. He liked it. That was, yeah, and they seemed. And I suppose my background had a big part of that. My upbringing, the fact that I was capable of articulating, maybe in a better way than some, has all held me in good stead. And because even on the odd occasion, going back to my bin washing, there's the odd person who said, "Oh, you don't sound like a bin washer." If that's so, I don't know what I sound like, but particularly, you don't often hear yourself talk. So. But that comes across. So maybe that's been part of my grammar school education. But and I honestly believe it comes from my parents and my fathers, my parents' peers, and those people. I've often firmly, people say, "Oh, you're taught so much at school about manners." I said, "No, my manners have come from my parents. I think I'm a gentleman in the way I treat people. I stand on the outside of ladies as we walk down a road or the roadside. I open doors for them. I stand up, and when people come into a room, when there's a group of us, at a dinner table, if there's out for meal and a female joins, I stand up until he's seated. Small things like that, which I think we're losing maybe in the greater scheme of things. And again, when I do it with younger women walking down the street, my niece and people like that, they look at me as if I'm mad. They're maybe having a conversation as we cross the road. I move to the other side, wonder what the hell I've gone. And I say, "No, I'm just walking on the outside of you. What are you doing that for?" And, things like that. But that has been always taught to me by my parents, and watching what my parents' friends do and did and how they greeted people. And I think treating people with respect can take you so many places that you can't believe. And I think maybe that's what I've been able to do with all these businesses. I've shown respect. I've come across as probably boiled down to being a good bluffer.
It's true, because but like a lot of things, you don't necessarily carry the skill set with you, but if you carry the tools with you, and as you say, you come across politely. Even manners, respect, being able to speak properly, that's a lot, and a lot of companies will actually want that. They can put the stripes on you, but you got to be the right animal in the first place.
Well, I think in all things that we do, and I think you and I know there's a gentleman we work with called Pat Slattery, who's a great motivator and a great mentor. And when you hear him talk, it's very important that you treat everybody with respect. And that starts with yourself. If you treat yourself with respect, then that knocks on as well. But everybody you meet, if you treat with respect, it comes back. And I think that comes across in all the jobs I've had, is that I am my front face, if you like. If I smile when people see me, then they'll smile back. If I'm a grumpy so-and-so, then people will be grumpy to me. Most people will know me that my signature is Peter Duke with a smiley, and that's on all my legal documents and has been for years. And even to the length of when I've had to sign documents for my brother in passing and things like that, I still put the smiley on. I might put it a grimace because it's that type of thing, but I still put it. And the amount of reaction I get from whenever I sign checks or I sign my lodgement documents in the bank, to see that person smile. Wow, if that's the only smile they've had all day, that's brilliant. And I even sign it on my tax return, but I always put a grimace and a couple of tears running down the cheek on that one. So, and hopefully that'll give somebody a laugh at the other end. But that has now become my signature, and it will be on everything I sign from now on, legal documents, whatever. And if people don't like it, that's too bad. That's not my problem. But again, I think the fact that I show that and respect people and respect myself and come across as outgoing and open as well. Maybe that's why these doors have opened for me, is because I come across as being open. And does that sort of explain it? I think it's as best as I can explain it, is that be open, be accommodating, be friendly, and that'll take you a lot of places, especially in sales. If people can relate to somebody, well, then they'll do business with you. If they can't, they'll move on to the next guy. And I'm not going to do business with everybody. I have to accept that. But hopefully 9 times out of 10, I will.
Well, I was curious, even the chap you were saying about, with the, I can't remember describing the gypsy, and even coming in to purchase a car. It's like, listen, you never know where someone's coming from. Years ago, I was involved in a nightclub, and I there's a chap, I was actually just working behind the bar at the time, and chap came in and got him a coffee. It was all the club was shut, and we were just having meetings and stuff, and gave him a coffee and chatting away and all that. And I found out he was the owner. I mistook him for the cleaner, and it's, be careful who you're talking to, because you never quite know.
Oh, 100%, and it works in all walks of life. And I always had, anytime I have had money, which hasn't been very often, and wanted to go buy something fairly large, and I've had the cash in my pocket, I've enjoyed going in looking rough, just waiting to see what the reaction will be. And like, you could wander around for some time before somebody will come over. And I keep thinking, well, I'm going to walk back out again, and I'll go somewhere else until somebody comes. I'd rather give the salesman the money who shows respect and shows interest in me than wait for somebody to come. So I'll walk until I find it. And I had great pleasure in doing that on many occasions. And it taught me an awful lot that, hang on, be courteous to everybody. Because it doesn't matter what they're wearing, what clothes they're in, who they are, and how they conduct themselves. If you're polite to them, the only time that they're going to overstep the mark is if they're rude to you. Then you don't deserve to take that because you haven't shown rudeness to them. Then you can say, excuse me, sir, I don't deserve that, or whatever way you want to handle it. But that's the only time you change that attitude. But yes, a suit of clothing, and it goes the other way too. Some people come in with all the suits and all the things in a row. It's just blum and bluster. They don't have it either. But you still have to give them the same respect, until you find out. But yes, yeah. Don't judge a book by its cover.
Absolutely.
It works, and it'll work for the rest of lifetime, I think.
No, fundamentally, as humans, we haven't changed that much. The content and what's going on maybe has, but the principles, we still like please and thank yous and respect, as you said.
100%.
Curious then, so Liverpool Building Society, now Birmingham Midshire. That's left town. Where are you at now?
Yes. Again, it's hard to remember so far back. I worked in a couple of petrol stations. Yeah, I worked in Crichton's in the night shift. I remember doing that because the reason for that was the night shift was £1 an hour more than the day shift. And I thought, well, I'm not doing anything else, so I might as well do nights. So I ended up there for about 3 years doing nights. And then a friend of mine phoned me during the day, and he said, again, another contact through rugby, etc. He worked for Mother's Pride, and every now and again would be short of a driver. So it coincided quite nicely with me filling my shift. My shift was from 11 to 7, 11 to 8 in the morning. So it meant that they would fill the van for me in Mother's Pride, which was on Boucher Road. So it was a short distance to go from Boucher Road or Crichton's to Boucher Road from Finnegy. So I went there, picked the van up, and then did deliveries until lunchtime, went to bed, and then up again for 11 o'clock night shift, And the odd time still was playing rugby, I think, too. So I was able to fit the rugby in because my night shift started on a Sunday, finished on a Friday night, started on Sunday. So it's amazing when you're young what you can fit in. I suppose a bit like going back to my father's ethos that he was able to do, the things that he did. I didn't find it difficult to go and do deliveries for bread until lunchtime and then go home, a couple of hours sleep and get up and do the night shift again. So I did that for about 3 years, and then left that to run a coffee shop for a friend of mine again from Rugby. In fact, the brother of the chap who in Muller's Pride. So for him, I opened a coffee shop and ran it until again they had ideas of grandeur and things how it was going to run. They could see other people open coffee shops and this is a great way for us to have our friends around and have coffee. And so I think it lasted about 2 years before it just wasn't making the profit he envisaged. And again, stupid. They offered to pay me a small salary and then cash in hand, and I stupidly said, "Forget about the cash in hand until we're making profit." I'm the sort of guy who can't take something if it's not there, and I just thought, no, we want to keep it open. We want to keep it going as long as we can. I even baked cakes for it. I even made bread to bring in to try and keep the cost down, which I never charged them for because I was concerned about. The biggest problem was he employed a chef. We didn't have the business for a chef and me. And I even said to him, look, to be honest, you should get rid of me because the chef can handle the management side of it. You don't need the two of us. And I think for a while he did do that. Because he was a friend, I just couldn't drag the money out of it. So I ended up working. His brother had left Muller's Pride and opened his own petrol station as a leasee, and I ended up working for him for a short time. And that's when the idea of the bins came up. It was working for him because I was on minimum wage, about £5-6 an hour, working in a petrol station on Clifton Street, just before Carlisle Circus, if anybody knows Belfast. And it wasn't an easy place to work, I can tell you, just beside Unity Flats. And but funnily enough, we never had any problem. Being from a different religious background to the majority of people living there, I would have been a Protestant and they would have been predominantly Catholic, but that never came into the issue. Funnily enough, under the owner of the petrol station, my friend John, he would have been the same, and yet we got on well because I think we were bringing a service to the community. And again, and the vast majority of people in those areas are lovely people. It's only a very small minority are the problem, as any of us know in Northern Ireland. It's the small minority causes the hassle. But I enjoyed my time there very much. So, but then I realised that if I could go and clean a bin at £2 a bin and did 4, I was earning nearly double my hourly rate. And if it took me 20 minutes, I could go home for the rest of it. So that started to make me think, hang on, there's possibly a business here, and nobody else was doing it. So I looked into it, and as I say, my parents then, I went across to England, met the guy, and then decided I was going to come back and start. And I remember in those days, there was a thing called the Lead-U grant, which you could get. It's moved on several times since Lead-U, but it's still there for people who want to go into business. But you had to go through hoops to get it. I think I tried to get £1,500 or something, and I managed to get maybe 1,000. I had to go for a week's course. I don't really know what in the end, but I went on the course anyway because you got passed out at the end of it, and that allowed you to go and get the grant. And I remember several times them putting us through the questionnaire of how do your competitors do it? How much do they charge? There are things that, and my answer to it all the time was, I don't have any. They don't have any charge. There is none. And the lecturer couldn't understand this. Of course you have. I said, I haven't. There's nobody doing bin cleaning. I said, I'm sorry, I can't answer those questions. I can't give you the answer you want because they're not there. So that was quite fun too, going through that type of thing. And I just felt it was of no great use to me, because most people going to that had entrepreneurial skills, had a sense of how money and how to, you can't really charge less than you're making and so on. And so it was, again, common sense to me. And I think nowadays common sense seems to have disappeared. I don't ever remember learning common sense, and I'm sure if I ask you, you probably never learned going to a class of common sense. It just was there. We just have it. But I think a lot of kids today don't, and I think that's not because they're inside on a computer, playing computer games and on technology more than we ever did. We were practical. We were out. We were building things. We were climbing trees. We were working out how to get a bus to the other side of town and back. So yes, look, I got the grant and started my bin business. And as I say, 27 years on, I'm still washing bins. So that's how I got into that eventually. And it's the best thing I ever did, because it didn't earn me a fortune, because my attitude has always been, if I earn enough in 3 weeks, why work the 4th? And it's probably not a good philosophy, because I should have pushed it on and earned a lot more money. But the beauty about it was it gave me time freedom. It gave me enough money to cover my bills, and it allowed me to go through those open doors, which eventually came to me. And at that time, I was doing amateur dramatics. and I got a few contacts which opened incredible doors for me. Like we did a production of Grease in the Arts Theatre in Belfast, which is just off Botanic Avenue. It's not there. Now the building's still there, but sadly it's not a theatre anymore, which is really sad because it was a lovely 500-600 seater theatre and it was perfect. And we did probably one of the longest amateur runs of a musical ever done by any amateur company. We did 3 weeks. And it was that successful that the producer came to us and said we would do another week and he would pay us all. So again, an amateur company being paid for doing a musical, fantastic. But it wasn't easy because all of us would have been working. So we'd come in from a day's work, go into the theatre about 6 o'clock, get ourselves ready for a show at 8, and we would do the show until 11. And on a Friday night, it was selling out so well that we did 2 shows. So come into work, get ourselves ready to do, and it was a hard show because, again, being in the gang, as it were, the Grease Lightning gang, we had to do the big routine, which was where we built the car, the Grease Lightning routine, and that was quite acrobatic. We built the human pyramid, 4, 3, 2, and 1, and every night the dance routine went so well we had to encore it. So on a Friday night we did that dance routine 4 times, and the second show was on from 11 o'clock. We got an hour off in between, so from 8 to 10, roughly the length of the show, and then an hour off, and then from 11 to 1 o'clock. So, but we were, I was 43 then or something, so reasonably fit and young, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. Just immense fun. And the guy doing that was a guy called Peter Corrie, was the teen angel in that particular show. And I got to know Peter very well. And I remember we were at an after-show party, and he was talking to us, and he says, do you think I should go for this sort of business? And like that was just stupid. We knew straight away that this man had potential to go anywhere with his voice he wanted. And coincidence to that was that a short time after that, he entered a competition called Go For It, which was a competition between RTE and UTV to find a star, basically. And Peter went on that show. And at the time, I had an LP from a guy called Mandy Patinkin. Now, you won't recognize the name, but you will know him. If you ever watched DR or if you watched Homeland, Mandy Patinkin is the guy in that, the Jewish-looking character with glasses now and again. But if you look him up, he's one of the main actors in ER, but he has an amazing tenor voice. Beautiful, absolutely out of this world. And I had an LP of his, and I gave it to Peter and said, Peter, I had marked out Somewhere Over the Rainbow. Listen to the way this guy sings Somewhere Over the Rainbow. And consequently, he did, and he sang that in the final of Go For It and won the competition. So it's all my fault, really. No, I think he had something to do with more than me, but it's nice to know that the song that I suggested he did sing. And there's been a few connections like that with me and Peter over the years, which I'll maybe relate to you later on.
Oh, wow. I want to just take you back a wee bit. I'm just curious, what did you learn in your week over in England with the other mobile refuse cleansing operative?
With the bin guy. Basically, I suppose I learned what not to do, if that makes any sense. And I think when people go into franchising and go into opportunities that come along, even network marketing to a certain extent, which I consider to be another form of franchising, is that you learn what not to do. The people who have already done it have made the mistakes. So you're hopefully going in at a quicker rate, if you know what I mean. And the type of people to call on. Like, for instance, I learned very quickly, not through him necessarily, through my own mistakes, that I was better not going to the Lone Road area of Belfast or the Antrim Road or whatever, because the majority of people in those areas can't afford to live there, if that makes sense, because they're all having to send the kids to the right schools. They're having to drive the right cars. So they're maybe struggling. Whereas the people who don't struggle, believe it or not, because 27 years in business, I can tell you, are the people who live in the States, the people in the Shankill and the Falls. They earn their livings. They set aside the money for the window cleaner, for the gas man, for the bin washer. They go to their club every weekend and enjoy a night out on a Saturday, and they have their 2 holidays. They save their money for Spain, and they go for a holiday during the winter. Now, you look at people with high-end incomes, or supposedly high incomes, they probably struggle to go on a holiday twice a year, and they certainly don't go down to a club of an evening or every Saturday or Sunday and enjoy themselves. They go out for a meal now and again. And I find the same. Most of my customers don't come from those areas, and if they do, they're very few. And if I do get them, it's once they'll say to me, oh, sure, that'll do the next time I need it done. It's not a regular thing with them. And going back, my father had a very close friend who ran the university shop and post office way years and years ago, before it's the big place it is now. And he said the same. He said the people he struggles to get money out of, because he did paper deliveries, were the people living on the main road. He always was chasing them. And that wasn't a lot of money. You know, a newspaper once a week or for a week, you know, the income wouldn't have been dear. And yet he struggled to get the money out of them. So I learned from that. But going back, I learned basically the process, how he built his filtration system, how he set up his business, how he collected his money. And I learned straight away from him that I wasn't going to do that. Like window cleaners and like other bin operators, they usually go back at an evening to collect their money. I said, hang on, I don't get paid for that. I could come back to your house 3 times in a week and you're not there. So I have to come home again, still empty-handed. Or I call, oh, Peter, I don't have my money, cash on me. Can you leave it the next week? So I've had, you know, I could take an hour to go around 20 customers, and will I get them all in the same night? I'll get some kind. So I decided from then on, I've never ever collected money, is that I will put an addressed envelope. I'm turning up at your door to wash your bin. I'm already there. So I might as well put an envelope through your door with an address. I don't stamp it. I just put an address on it with the amount owing, and you pop me a check and it comes back. Or you leave it under the mat, you leave it under the windowsill, or I simply bill you, or you pay me in advance. And that's the way. So that was what I learned from not doing what he did, if that helps. That I learned that very quick. I said, no, it doesn't pay me to spend 2 or 3 hours a week. My brother then subsequently went into bins for, we joined up and he had his own bin run. He had the money, but that was very time consuming. And I just thought, no, my time's more important than doing that. So that's the sort of things I would have learned. Learned maybe how to use his wee leaflets and set up that way. Come back with a guy for a design for a logo. Learned not to let them run up too big a bill, because then they would disappear and not want their bins done again. So things like that. Yeah. It taught me through it and where the best wee power washer to buy, which was very small in comparison to what I would use now. Just a basic domestic, but it got me going. You know, so yes, very kind that he took me in for that week and took me out in his run, and I enjoyed his time, and it was great. And sadly, we've lost contact with each other now. So I'd love to get back in contact if he's still. I would imagine he's not. He's well retired now, because I'm heading that way myself.
But it's very, very entrepreneurial, and I'm very, supportive of your parents as well to sort of, put it. I wouldn't say put up with it, but almost to go along with it, I suppose.
It took a while. As I think I said earlier, my parents, certainly my mother, felt that I was living at home at the time, I think, and they said, oh, they put up every obstacle they could, because until they spoke to my aunt about it, they basically said, well, you're not coming into this house until you've showered and cleaned yourself. I said, well, where can I don't know anybody who'll let me in their house. You know, I live here. No, you're not on this and all the other things, and said, you weren't given a grammar school education, and this would be, and it's not right, and blah. But then again, my aunt was 18 years senior to my mum. And so she would have been seen as the matriarch of the family, if you like. So if my aunt said it was okay, then it probably was okay. And she was married to a military gentleman. He was bomb disposal. My Uncle Jim was a major in bomb disposal. So again, that was alleviated him above the norm, if you like, being a major. So if they knew people who got their bin washed, then it was probably okay. So that's how I got the connection through my aunt, to her friend who got their bin done, got his name, got his telephone number, phoned him, and then headed off to see him. And my parents say, look, best way to do is go and see him. And I think they helped me out with a bit of money to do that. And basically that's how it developed.
That's awesome. And the great thing is, I suppose, you are literally generating your own business, from that.
Yeah, again, I look back. I suppose I don't feel it was something unique or great, but I suppose looking back on it, when you think of it, I started from zero, complete zero, no customers, nothing. A bit like my wife. A lot of people who listen to this chat will know my wife from Paul's Doggy Daycare, and she did exactly the same. So, but going back 27 years, I suppose it was quite a big thing to do, to take that leap. But then, I keep going back to those doors that I referred to. all the time is that that was a door that opened to me, and I saw that opportunity. I opened the door, but I never thought. I always realized I could always go back. It was something I could always go back to the petrol station. I could always go back to doing something else. It was never frightened me because I knew I can always go back to. I'll always find something to do. And maybe that's again my background and my education has shown me, and the fact that I can articulate, and that opens doors and things. So it never frightened me. I suppose looking back, it was quite something to do at my age then. What? Yeah, I wasn't that old. Wasn't that young.
Mm-hmm.
I don't suppose I save it as a major thing. I just did it, But yeah, I suppose looking back, it's not everybody would take that risk and jump in and do it.
Were you driven by the money or the flexibility, or what was it? Do you
I suppose I think a bit of both. I was earning £5 an hour, wasn't going to get me anywhere, and I thought, well, there's an awful lot of bins out there. If I wish, really, maybe looking back, I should have pushed it far more, and I could have maybe sat back. But I suppose delegation I've always found, and any members of staff I have considered employing have always screwed it up. Again, I'm a people person, and my customers are my people, if you like, and I'm concerned about the job's done right for them. And I've had I remember I was away a couple of years ago. My wife, we decided we'd go away for a couple of months. We went to France skiing, and it's not far from a lovely log cabin in a forest. And we stayed there for 2 months. And I employed a guy who I got to know through networking. And I said he was out of work. And I said, well, you try taking the bins, and I'm sure if it works out, we'll maybe do something together on the bins. So I paid him, I think I was paying him a reasonable rate, 10, 11 pounds an hour, something like that, to look after the bins. And I came back, and I realized that one day he hadn't gone out. And I said, oh, what happened that day? He said, oh, it was my 65th birthday. My wife decided to take me out. What? What about my customers? And then there was another day he hadn't done, and the reason for that was he had forgotten his mobile phone and decided he couldn't do the bin run. No thought of going back and getting it, maybe starting an hour later, and then one day he didn't do it because he brought the wrong run sheet. Again, our warehouse was in Lisburn at the time where I kept the vehicle, and he lived at Dundonald, so it wasn't a huge distance to go. But anyway, so whatever his reasons, and I just thought, hang on, what do you do? What do you do? So I have found it very hard to get the right staff over the time. And again, because they're my customers and I care for them, I'm particular about who looks after them, I suppose. So, but really I should go back now. And having recently, over the coronavirus thing, I've been doing a thing called the Outstanding Network, which some of your listeners won't know of, but it's well worth them searching out on Facebook if they can look it up. I would recommend anybody looking at it moving forward. I've met a few people in that, and I'm going to reach out to a couple of people who are in the cleaning business just to see how they manage and handle people, to see if I can utilize some of that into what I do, because I want to step back from the bin cleaning. I'm 62. It's not getting any easier, and I want to do other things, but I don't want to lose it. I'd rather give it to somebody and get £100 a week for it, and knowing that my customers will be looking, and I can pop in now and again just to say hi to them, So
yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Have you ever found weird stuff in a bin?
Not particularly. I've seen the odd dead mouse and that. No human limbs or bones or anything like that. Probably if I'd been watching through the height of the Troubles, that might have been a different scenario completely. But thank God, no. The worst of all was I remember, and funny enough, another wee story. I like entering competitions, but I'll explain that in a wee minute. But the bottom of bin, I opened the lid, and the whole bottom of it was moving, completely moving. It was full of maggots. The whole bottom was just a continual movement of maggots. It must have been thousands of them. And I remember I entered a competition on radio. Just every now and again, I listen to the radio when I'm on my run, and I send off a thing thinking, oh, nothing will come back. And I did it with a John and Ross show. And next thing, I got a phone call from John and Ross to say, right, you'll be on the show on Saturday morning. Oh, right. And again, that was one of the questions he asked me. Did you ever find, because whenever I describe myself as a mobile refuse receptacle, cleansing operative, it gets a chuckle from most people. And so I explained the whole thing to him, and he said, oh, if you ever, and I explained that, and he was nearly violently sick on the air when I mentioned the fact the bin was moving with thousands of maggots. But no, that's all. Nothing too serious, thank goodness. Nothing valuable either, sadly. No, not even a great deal of money. No, nothing of that extent, really.
That's amazing. So tell me then, how did the acting come about, the amateur dramatics, and what was your first part?
Was with a girl I was going with at the time. I think she was a member of Banbridge Choral Society and dragged me along, and I thought this looks a bit of fun. So I got involved on stage, singing and dancing in the background. Thank goodness where nobody could hear or see me, which was great. And then I loved, again, going back to my drawing and my hands-on. I love making props and coming up with ideas for props. I remember one I came up with was we were doing a show called The Pajama Game. I think it was. It's an old show, but it's a lovely show. Nice music in it. And one of the things was you went to a festival and they had a knife throwing act. So I thought, how are we going to do this on stage? So I came up with the idea of a board, which was you could turn so angle it away from the audience. And the idea was that I had sprung loaded, there were slits in it, which were covered with paper. And I had sprung loaded knives made of plywood that come through the slits. So what happens is there's a guy the guy who is throwing the knives has the same replica of knives in his hand. You can do it yourself at home. And what you do is if you throw your arm back over your shoulder and release that item, it goes backwards. And you then bring your arm forwards. At all intents and purposes, look like you've thrown it, but you haven't. It's gone backwards over your backwards over your shoulder. So that's the technique we used. And as soon as he did that, I released the spring. The knife came out of the board, and it looked like he had thrown it. It was great from the side. It was really worked very well. And also the girl he was throwing at, I was able to time one that we had an apple that was cut in half, and we just used a wee bit of blue tack, I think, and that kept us together. And what happened was whenever he threw at her head, the knife came through the slat, hit the top of the apple, and it burst in half and fell to the ground. So I got great fun doing things like that and coming up with ways. And it did, from the audience side, it worked perfectly. But then what happened sometimes is the stage hands would come on and put their hands through the slits to carry it off, which would give the game away. So we had to train them eventually. No, carry it off differently, would you? But then again, that's what amateur shows are about, is the fun side of it too. So, but yeah, so that developed into joining a company called First Act, which was basically an invitational company. But whenever I joined, I think they were very short of men, and that was the only reason they included me, because it was run by a guy called Peter Kennedy, and he selected people from all the amateur companies. So it was a very, very top-end company. If you like, everybody hoped that they would get into First Act because the quality of the shows we did were incredible. And most of the shows were his own writing. We did a very great show called Clown, just beautifully written, beautifully done, and tear-jerking show. Too short now to go into that, but his shows were brilliant, and we did great. That was the one we did Grease with in the Arts Theatre, and we did several shows of his which were fantastic. But the quality was so there because the dancers were so good, the actors were top of the amateur tree because he invited them. And as I say, I snuck in the back. I don't know how I got into it. Very short of extra men, I think, at the time he allowed me in. But I got great fun with it. I met so many lovely people. And I still go back to those days and have great memories of some of the best shows we did. We did a great show called The Best Little Whorehouse in Texas. And that's a great show. Dolly Parton was in it. And Ivan Little, some of you may remember from UTV and doing television and stuff. He played a part in it, and working with him was great fun. And I remember one of the dances, again, because it was such a frenetic dance, was called the Aggie Dance. And basically the story goes where the local college team, if they win the championship, the mayor of the town gives them a night in the whorehouse free. So basically the dance we had to do was coming from the American football pitch with our American football gear on, stripped down and dress up as cowboys, going off to the whorehouse. And of course we had to do that while doing a dance routine. So every night we had to encore that. But it was great time. I was playing rugby for Banbridge rugby club at the time, and it was great for the boys saying, "You coming for a drink?" I said, "No, I'm off to do my stage show again." So 1 minute I'm like, as people would say, pussyfooting about on a stage. So 1 minute I'm knocking the hide out of each other on a rugby pitch, and then, as they would call it, the rugby guys would say, pussyfooting about on a stage in the evening. So there was me going off to do whorehouse in the evening and doing a striptease dance routine and scenes in a whorehouse. You may guess what they were like. So, so yes, it was fantastic, great fun, and I have so fond memories. But it was the contacts I made that took me on many a journey. Like I met Peter, on that, who then ended up going on to star in Les Miserables in the West End of London. And some of your listeners will know of Peter, and a great talent. So he ended up doing that and doing very well, played the policeman in that, Javert. And I was lucky enough to go and see him there many a time and met more of the people backstage. So he put on a few shows when he came back here, and I would always get the phone call to pick up gear. And one of the shows he did was a gala performance of the stars from Les Mis in Dublin. And they would come up and do it a charity show in the Opera House. So the likes of Colin Wilkinson, who are not, again, some of your listeners will know very well, major talent. He was in the film Les Mis playing the bishop or the priest, but he also played Jean Valjean for many years. It was partly written for him, the part. He was the first one asked to play the part. And he came up, and I remember sitting in the audience, I went down and brought all their music gear, all their props up in my van at the time. And again, meeting these guys is just amazing. And watching them work, I remember my girlfriend at the time was a musician and a music director, and she was in the audience with me watching Colin Wilkinson rehearse. And amazing, just hitting that note, that high note that he does and Bring Him Home. It was amazing the way his face contorted. And she said, watch that guy, he's just, the air is resonating around his whole face to come out through his throat. And it was amazing, but getting that opportunity, and then other opportunities have come my way. When Peter said to me, one of the funniest was his first show back home in the Opera House. It was with a huge band. It was the first time he'd done anything like this. So he'd employed the services of a guy called Hugh Wooldridge. And Hugh Wooldridge is one of the top directors in the West End. He's done huge shows with Michael Ball. He's worked with Andrew Lloyd Webber, to name but a few, Michael Crawford. So he was coming over to do this. And so we were having a meeting, myself, Peter, musical director, and I was brought in. I was introduced as Peter's personal assistant and stage manager. I didn't say anything, but I said, this is the first time I'd ever been described as a stage manager. Normally I'm a gopher, go and get this. And I thought that's what Peter wanted me to do. So I really had to learn on my feet, because this show was going on tomorrow night. So basically Hugh expected me to be a stage manager. He's worked with stage managers in the West End to know the job backwards. They've studied it. They've gone to college to study it. So here's me. So anyway, one of my major mistakes was my job was to cue behind the closed curtain the orchestra and Peter. And what happens, because Hugh was in the auditorium, he was down beside the lighting desk and the sound desk. So his job would be verbally to go and signal to those two guys, which I couldn't see, obviously, because I'm on stage. So I had a set of cans on, which are headphones, basically, as they call them in the business. And I could listen to him and talk to him with these cans. So the cans had about 3 foot of cable. So I was standing side stage. Now, of course, I couldn't shout go, because the orchestra have to see me give that cue. It's not an audible cue, it's an audible and visual cue. So I have to be in the center stage. So, okay, I thought, right, I can do that. So next thing, Hugh gives me the cue. So lights come up, sound goes up because he's there doing it. Curtains open. I run on to give the cue because my cans don't cover me. It can't take me out the center stage. There's only 3 feet of wire. So I run. No good, Peter. You can't be there. You got to be in the middle. Oh, sorry, Hugh. Okay, sorry. So I said, what do I do now? What do I do? I can't. So eventually one of the stage crew took me aside and said, Peter, look, don't worry. And I had already told them that I was a bit naive. I was in my deep end here. And they've been so good to me. They had me on his foot and took me aside. And again, it goes back a wee bit to what we've always been talking about, this caring, showing respect for people, showing that you are vulnerable, showing that you need help. And ask. And of course, I didn't think to ask. So he tapped me on the shoulder and said, Peter, we can give you an extension for your headphones. Right, brilliant. So plugged in the extension. I stood in the middle of the stage with my headphones on. He cued me, band go, bang, bang. Everything went up and I walked off with the curtain. Perfect. But again, just knowing what to do. But I never, ever made that mistake again, ever. And it taught me to ask. If I didn't know something, don't be frightened to ask. And it's amazing when you ask somebody for help, they're a friend of yours, if you know what I mean. They'd rather you ask them than screw it up. I was going to say something else there, but they become more helpful to you because you've asked. So that was a great opportunity, and that opened doors. And then I was doing a Christmas show for Peter one year in the Transport Museum. We started doing shows there called the Music Box every Christmas. Very successful show for him. And I've done every one. We've done it for 11 years now. And I met his manager at the time he'd worked with, and I'd done tours of Holland and different things. And his name was Michael Durkin. And I mentioned to Michael, I said, look, Michael, if you ever need somebody to go on tour with you, give me a shout. Not thinking anything would happen. And he says, okay, I'll keep you in mind, Peter. Again, these are the sort of things you say and think, well, that's not going to happen. So this was about a week. Peter's shows are usually about a week before Christmas. So that was fine. Then got a phone call about 2 days before Christmas. And it was Michael Durkin saying, do you fancy going to Holland on tour? Or it was Germany. Germany. I said, I certainly, no problem. When you're thinking it, he says, well, the only problem is you have to go on Boxing Day. Oh, right. Okay. So I quickly put a note around as many of my customers as I could. And I spoke to the wife and said, and she said, yeah, if you want to go, yeah, certainly, go. So I ended up driving, getting the bus down to Dublin Airport. And that was the first time I met any of the crew. The only one I knew was Michael. And I flew off to Germany and was tour manager for a 2-month tour of Germany. So talk about being thrown in the deep end again. But again, that's opened doors and I learned things from that. Then Peter took me on a tour with him as well. That led me to working with David Hull Promotions in Belfast, who would be the local promoter for a lot of the local celebrities we have. George Jones, the news, Pamela Ballantyne would be agents. They'd be agents for them. So I ended up working with the Hole in the Wall Gang, which is a production company back home, as some of your listeners will know, a comedy group who go out and write comedy and stuff. So I ended up as their stage manager. Now, in this type of stage management was totally different again, because they have a script. So the part of the stage manager's job, as some of your people will know, is you have to write what's called the Bible. And the Bible basically is every cue, every line of the script, every lighting cue, sound cue, firework cue, whatever. Everything is in this script. And I have to then be at every rehearsal, because they might say, oh, instead of coming in the right side of the stage, come in the left. So I then have to note down on my side of my script that Tim's coming in left instead of right. And all this is written down in notation. Then if he comes in the wrong side, I say, no, Tim, we changed that last week. You're now coming in from right stage. And, oh, no, that lighting cue's now moved from there to left to right. So that then becomes the source. It's known as the Bible because if I can't stage manage the show some night, they bring somebody else in. That person can read my notes and completely control the show, never having done it before. So the Bible is the key to every show that exists. Basically, behind the scenes, you won't know that, but there's a Bible that any stage manager can go in and operate the show from. So I'd never done that before. So I went to a girl who had done it and sat with her, saw how she did it, and then made a few notes and did that. And then we went on tour of Ireland for a couple of weeks with that. And I was the tour manager, the bus driver, and also catering on that trip as well, which was good fun. I used to bake cakes and bring it down, which they thoroughly enjoyed and stuff like that. So, and another thing I always try to do is the more work I can do on a trip like that and cover more, and wear more caps, if you like, for that job, the likelihood of getting back again. So if I can cover several jobs, then for the price of one, if you like, then I'm likely to be asked back again, is my philosophy and things like that. Probably end up being used and abused more, maybe, but I had great fun. And then the other guy I worked with was Paddy Keelty on a tour, which was great fun as well. So again, those doors opened through amateur dramatics and meeting Peter and working with him. And if I hadn't said yes, those doors wouldn't have opened. So again, being so lucky, so lucky. If you have time, there's another great story. If that would have been Bill Clinton. I got a phone call again because I have the van, and the van from bin cleaning has been used for deliveries and different things. So I got a phone call from a guy called John Anderson, who, again, some of your people will know through the School Choir of the Year up at home. He does a lot of that. He was the guy who invented that. He taught in Methody for years, a musical teacher. He was an Estonian himself, and he's done his own radio show and Radio Ulster and different things. Very involved in music. He used to have his own band that would go out and do show band shows and different types of big band shows. And it was John Anderson and he had music stands which were made of plywood, completely useless to travel with because it couldn't fold. Ach, a nightmare. Just I hope they get broken sometime. I think they have now and can't be used again, thank goodness. But he phoned me to ask me would I bring them to the stage at the side of the Bill Clinton speech when he first came to Belfast. And that was about 6-8 feet above the ground. This stage has been built up because there was 10-20,000 people turned up that night to hear Bill Clinton speak. So I said yes, and I brought these stands down and drove them in and out and in and out and moved stuff backwards, forward. And I thought, well, I might as well stay here for the rest of the day. I'm having a bit of crack. The atmosphere is fantastic. I'm involved and right in the middle of it all, so I stayed. So there was a phone backstage, which was just an ordinary phone way back then. It wasn't a mobile or anything. And John would phone me to cue a few things or set a few things up, and I stayed back. But next thing, the phone rang again, and it was a guy called Jerry from the White House staff. And he said, excuse me, who's that? I said, it's Peter. And he said, are you going to be there all day? I said, yeah, no reason. That's fine. He said, I'll get back to you. Didn't know what he meant or hadn't a clue what was happening. So Van Morrison was due to play later on that evening with Brian Kennedy. And the plan was, unbeknownst to me, but Jerry then informed me, he phoned me back and said, look, Peter, the way it's going to run is we'll let you know when Bill Clinton arrives because Van Morrison's set is a long enough time for him to meet and greet and then get to the podium to give his speech. So we don't want Van Morrison going on early, otherwise it won't flow. So basically, Jerry was instructing me the movement of the President of the United States. So basically, he would pick up the phone and say, Peter, he's in his helicopter, he's on his way. Great. Oh, no, sorry, Peter, he hasn't taken off yet. We'll get back to you. Yes, he's on his way, that's fine. Peter, he's arrived at the City Hall. He's just getting out of his car. And several times I had to send Van Morrison back to the green room and say, sorry, Van, I haven't got clearance to let you on stage yet. And his girlfriend at the time was getting really cross. I don't know why, because nothing to do with her particularly, but she was getting rather upset that he couldn't get on stage. And some of the other musicians I would have known from working with Peter, so they were able to go on and set up and get sorted out. And eventually I got the clearance and everything, and Van was on. So basically I ran the show. But the nicest moment was, I wish I had a camera. In those days, no phones, of course. I was about 6-8 feet above ground level where Bill Clinton was doing a speech. And to the side of the stage, it had a curtained off area behind his podium where he was right in front giving his speech. And this was, again, him going forward for his second term. So he wanted it to go well because he'd get the Irish vote and everything. So it had gone extremely well. So his wife had come through this curtained area to the back of the stage, and there was only them there. The wife, the two kids had done the speech with him. And then he came through. And you know that way, when something goes well, you put your fists up to either side of your face and you crouch down and you give a yay. Well, he did exactly that as he came through the curtain because he didn't see me. There was just his wife and him and the two kids, and it had gone so well, he gave that motion and let out a scream. Boy, if I had had a camera, would not have made some photograph. But hey ho, I didn't. So that was one of the doors that didn't open for me on that occasion. Not having a camera to take a photograph that probably would have gone around the world. But again, what an opportunity to be 6 feet away from the President of the United States with no security, just me, and then Van Morrison and all the other people, Brian Kennedy and everything else that went involved. So yeah, that was a nice one.
I mean, fair play. I mean, you've obviously had this opportunity to meet so many different people and see all these different things. And I'm just curious about the contacts and how you've got into all this,
Well, again, it was very straightforward. It was saying yes to go down. Again, it goes to just that door and saying yes. It was that the girlfriend at the time said, are you coming down to see a show or I'll help out? I said, certainly. So I went down. And from then, I got into shows. I enjoyed them. Moved to first act. Met Peter. That went on a different tangent because he could see that I was capable, I suppose. Again, none of these I have done from an expertise background in any way. But I suppose it shows I'm willing to learn. And I do take it professionally. I never consider myself to be a professional compared to somebody who's stage managed all their lives. But I don't believe I'm any less, if that makes sense, than them. I just have done it. I suppose I've done an apprenticeship in those jobs, whereas they've done the other route of going through college. I have done it through the hard graft of learning and making the mistakes, which they probably through college wouldn't make. But boy, has that taught me. And again, saying yes. If you don't say yes, if I'd said no to Peter, I would never have toured. I would never have been involved with John Anderson to move music stands. I would never have met Van Morrison and told him, clear off, you're not allowed back on stage yet. Which he took in good humour because he was going back to the green room for a few more drinks. But if I had said no to that, Peter probably would never have asked me again. So my attitude has always been, say yes. A bit like Richard Branson. His famous saying is, if you're offered a great opportunity, but you're not quite sure, say yes and work out how to do it later. If you say no to that opportunity, it's not going to be asked of you again. So I think it's simply because I'm prepared to say yes and see where it takes me. Knowing I can, because don't forget, I can always go back. I can always go back to bins. I can always go back to working in a petrol station. I can always go back to something I've done, because I have that experience.
Out of curiosity, do you enjoy getting in the deep end? I mean, as you say, you say yes, but I mean, some people that would panic them and send them off on one, but that seems to almost be like a fuel for you.
It's a hard question to answer. I suppose because I've fallen into these things, I've never looked at what's the worst can happen. I've looked at it as a common sense approach. Well, what's the worst can happen is I can sort it. The only time I would ever panic me, and again, I would hold my hands up and say, I'm sorry, I have done that to the best of my ability, but I just couldn't do it. But hopefully I have enough time to ask somebody. I suppose, going back, yeah, there are things which do frighten you. Again, you're hearing the good parts, I suppose, of these doors. You're not hearing all the bad times, and most of them haven't been bad. But there was one on tour with Peter in Holland. We were staying in a forest of log cabins, which was just really handy and a really lovely place to stay. Ginkeldoon, I think it's called, in the centre of Holland, plumb in the centre, because it's easy to get everywhere from there. And we were doing a tour about 2.5 hours drive away, or a show that night. And my job, again, putting all the different caps on, I was stage manager, tour manager, looking after the washing, the drying, and making sure the costumes were pressed and ironed and everything ready. So we got on the bus and we headed off. An hour or so into the journey, I went up to the bus driver and whispered in his ear, could you pull over, please? I need to check something. I knew in the deepest recessions of my heart, there's no point looking because I hadn't put the costumes on. But I had to, anyway, I just knew they weren't on, but so I had to go through the process. Peter kept saying, what are we stopping for? I said, no, it's okay, don't worry. It's all right. Because again, he's about to do the show. The last thing he needs is to panic. So my job is to try and take any pressure off him I can. His girlfriend at the time, and now his wife, was also on the show. She was his assistant and tour manager, or not tour manager, but choreographer and everything. So they both said, what's wrong? So eventually got off, opened the thing, and had to come back. Again, how do you tell your best friend, your boss, everything, that there are no costumes for that night's show? And we're too far into the journey for the bus driver to go back. So the decision was to leave me in Holland somewhere. I don't speak the language. I don't have a roadmap. I have a mobile phone. Leave me at an industrial estate. And the plan was the driver would then organise for a taxi. Now, what happens if the taxi doesn't come? I don't know how to phone a taxi in a foreign country or how to go about it. So next thing, a taxi comes up and says, are you? I said, yes, it's me. Drove as quick, and again, over there, they're very strict on traffic. You get, speeding's a nightmare. So again, it is so frightening to watch a speedometer sit at 30 or 40 or whatever the speed is, and watch your watch at the same time going slower and slower, and yet the time of the venue getting closer and closer. Weird situation. So got there, got the costumes. Now, unbeknownst to me, the taxi driver was instructed to take me to a railway station. It wasn't to take me all the way back to the show. So I was left at a railway station trying to figure out how to get to a place I didn't know where it was. Got on a train. That was all right. The train had to stop because we were doing repairs to the line. So it wasn't going all the way to where the show was. So luckily, somebody sitting in the seat opposite overheard me. He was going to the same place I was going. So he went off, checked to see if I got a train. I went and see if I got a taxi. Got a taxi from there. And again, the situation of the speedometer and this clock was getting closer and closer to deadline where the show was going to have to be put back. But anyway, got it all done, got sorted, got the ironing done, got there, show went on. Everything fine. But the kindest thing that happened to me on that, which was that cost somewhere in the region of close to €200, which was my fault. Nobody else's fault. I had to take that on the chin. But unbeknownst to me, the cast, and it still brings a lump to my, was the cast that made a collection for me to pay. And I didn't pay it all, but I paid the vast amount of it. So I suppose that goes back to what the thread of this conversation has always been: treat people with respect, and it comes back to you. Sorry. I find that just a lovely thing, that people would do that for you.
Mm-hmm. No, I mean, it's almost a form of recognition and a thank you as well.
Well, again, it shows you that if treat people with respect, and unbeknownst to you, it'll come back to you in some way. And, I was so, and the way it came up to me, they sat me in the bus, and Fleur, Peter's partner, came up to me and said, "Look, Peter, I'm going to ask you a question." And they know me too well. They just know me backwards. And she says, "The only answer you can give me is yes." I said, "Well, I'm sorry, I can't do that." She says, No, you have to. And she handed me an envelope. And I said, "I can't." She said, "No, you have to." So there you go.
Well,
so that's what a case of where it could have gone disastrously wrong. So it doesn't always go smoothly. But that's my job. My job is to make sure it is work out right. And that's just, a tour manager's job is incredibly difficult because you've got a cast of people to work with. You've got to make sure they're happy. If their hotel room's not right, you've got to sort it. If their food's not right, you've got to sort it. Especially in a foreign country where if you're on tour, you're maybe using a tour chef that comes with you. If they don't like what he said, you have to maybe change that. You have to get that sorted. If somebody's family dies when they're away, you have to do your best to get them back from the back end of nowhere on a flight. I remember one time I had to actually go with it because I just wouldn't leave her on her own. This girl lost her grandmother, who's like a mother to her, cut to pieces. She was about 18, 19. And the guy said, "Oh, just put her on." I said, "No, I have to go with her. What happens if she misses a connection? Like, she's in grief here." So that was a long day trying to keep her happy and get her on a flight to make sure she got home. And then getting her back on tour again. So loads of wee things that you can't imagine. Then when there's maybe a night off and you're in a hotel, the kids could get a bit excited with a few drinks and relaxing. There could be a lot of damage done. So again, what they don't realize, but I do as a tour manager, is we're also, what's the best word to describe it? I can't think of it, but basically we're promoting other companies who come from other countries after us. So if we destroy a hotel or damage it in such a way, that hotel might be closed to other companies touring. So we can't just think of our tour. We've got to think of, and maybe we want to come back again. It might be a hotel we actually enjoyed and was a good spot to come back to. So you've got to think of all that as a tour manager, and again, have to then pay for damage and try and get it back off. You have to make sure they get on a bus in time. Getting them up in the morning because we've deadlines to meet, but they think, they drag themselves out of bed and get on a bus. And then you've got musicians who are older. I remember one instance where we had a fine on the bus, but if you didn't get on your bus by 10 o'clock when you were instructed to, then you would be fined and the money would go into a kitty for later. And again, then all of a sudden you get the musicians wandering on, and they would immediately say to me, "I hope you're not thinking of fining us in front of all the rest of them, so how can I not fine them?" So you're always at loggerheads because they were adults. They felt they couldn't be told not to drink, and the kids would be sacked if they were caught with drinking in their dressing rooms, whereas the musicians would be allowed. If it was me, I would have banned it all. But the boss who employed me, he said, "No, musicians need a drink. They're used to it. That's what they do." But when they're clanking on the bus with their drink clattering in a carrier bag, and the rest of the cast can't do that, very difficult to manage. So you were managing egos, you were managing adults who felt they could drink whenever it suited them, and other kids who were basically young adults who couldn't. So yeah, a thin line you were walking to try and keep everybody happy. But hey, that's the fun of it all.
Well, you obviously got quite a buzz from it, yeah?
Huge buzz, huge. But I think it goes back to me being able to do the bins. I come back to reality after a tour, going out and washing somebody's bin. And the nice thing is I can do that for a period of time and enjoy that and enjoy my customers. And then all of a sudden, maybe in 3 months' time, I'm going off on tour again. So maybe it wouldn't be as much fun if I had to do it all my life. Maybe dipping my toe now and again and doing it when it suits me fits me very well. And again, it means I'm not stuck. I can go somewhere else. I can say yes to that one because it's only a short tour they want somebody for. Whereas a stage manager is looking for a 3-4 year contract, maybe to tour the world. And, you know, he's looking for something more solid. Whereas I only need one that pays me for a week, 2, 3 months because I have the bins. And it pays well too. So, you know, I get paid. I probably would do it if it was just for the fun of it too, you know, because, but yeah, it's nice to have that income.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm just curious, you've mentioned baking and cooking there a couple of times. Are you a bit of a chef or a bit of a baker?
No. I've always liked challenges in life. I joined a circus school for a while and got great pleasure out of learning one of the ones I do love is tightrope walking. I learned that, and I just find that fascinating and didn't find it difficult. Now, if it was 20 feet off the ground, that might be a different question. But another crazy story, I'll go off on these tangents, but working with Peter at his Christmas show, we were in the Europa after show, having a few drinks, and one of the sponsors for his show were the people who basically own the rights to the Goliath cranes and manage the Goliath cranes and to market them around the world. It's hard to believe they're marketed in their own right, but they are. And I remember saying, I have a great idea for you. Because I think it was coming up until the anniversary of Titanic and everything. And the biggest thing that Harland and Wolff and the people who run the cranes hate is being associated with Titanic, because that was a disaster. You know, Harland Wolff made an awful lot of brilliant ships. Now, that was a brilliant ship. It was just coincidence and all that hassle. But still, they don't like to be associated with things like that. They like to think of things better. But I said, look, I have a great idea. I said, why don't I string a line between the two Goliath cranes and we'll do a tightrope walk between the two? And they went absolutely manic, saying, oh, we can't do that, the risk. And I said, come on, I'll do it. I said, because there'll be safety harnesses, there'll be risk assessed, we'll take it. I said, I'll even phone, and I phoned some of the circus companies to see if they would take me on to train me how to do a high wire act at that sort of height. And I remember back that your woman Skelton from Blue Peter actually did a walk between the two chimneys in London, you know, the iconic chimneys. Can't remember their name. And she actually did
Battersea.
Yes. And I said to myself, well, if a kid of that age can do it, I can do it. And where something comes along, funny, I can't do mental things so well, like go and sell that to somebody. But you see, if you challenge me to tightrope walk, if somebody else has done it, they're no different to me. They've got feet, they've got legs. All they've learned is to balance. So I could learn that. There's no reason why I can't. So maybe it's the fact that I like challenges, but I was prepared to do that, but I couldn't talk them into it. So the circus school was great fun. I learned to stilt walk, and I taught myself to juggle before that. So my next thing I want to try and learn is unicycling. So probably when I get home, I'll buy a unicycle, and that'll be the next thing to have a go at. But I think it's my have a go nature. It gives me great buzz and great fun. And yeah. Why should kids have all the fun?
Oh, listen, absolutely. I love that. You know, the have a go nature is a great attitude to have. You know, why not? Why not?
I forgot what your question was. I went off on a bit of a tangent there with that story.
Well, I was actually asking about baking and cooking, but
oh yes, sorry. Yes. Again, that was just another challenge. My grandmother many years ago taught me how to make it. I've always cooked at home. I would have maybe helped cook the Sunday dinner, and then I would have taken on as a youngster, maybe 10 or 12, would have cooked a dinner for the parents, because, you know, I felt they were busy enough, you know, with 3 kids. And I remember I always liked to try and surprise them when they had friends in, of maybe making the pot of tea for them and just turning up with tea and scones or something on a tray. Now, I wouldn't have baked the scones, it would have been biscuits, but and the great delight I would have got from the people's faces, oh, they weren't expecting that, you know, and turn up. And I remember it happened once. I would have been about 9, and unfortunately I spilt the kettle of boiling water on my leg, and severe burns, but I didn't say anything because I felt I couldn't, you know, because they had guests in. So eventually I think they noticed my leg was so badly burnt, and I got to hospital. And that year we were to go to Butlins, way back in the day, for Butlins Mosney, as it was then, for a 2-week holiday. And sadly, the whole time there, I had to wear bands and couldn't go swimming in the pool the whole time because of the bad burn. But just got on with it, you know. I suppose in those days you did. So but yes, that my grandmother taught me how to bake a really simple chocolate cake, and to this day, the amount of people who love that recipe, all my friends are delighted when I turn up with a chocolate cake for them, and they just rave about that particular recipe. So I've done that a few times, and I didn't take a challenge. Like, another challenge was in the pub one day. they were talking about it was a girl's 40th birthday, and she sort of said, "Oh, I never get anything." So I spoke to the husband after, and I said, do you think she'd like a cake?" "Oh, he would." So I'd never decorated a cake before, so I made them a cake, which was lovely, two-tier cake. I had to go and buy special tins to make it. It would end up with a slant. I made it designed so it slanted two ways. I covered with beautiful white icing and made wee flowers. And she was over the moon because they were having their do in the pub that night and couldn't believe that this cake was made for her. So have a go. Sure, what's the worst can happen? You throw it in the bin and start again. It's but yes, that gives me great pleasure to do. And I make scones now and again. Made pancakes recently for my wife and things with the COVID. So yeah, have a go. Sure, it's a recipe. It's just putting things together.
Absolutely, that was great. You've a real it's almost like a pleaser gene. You love to help or to please other people. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, my wife and a lot of people would tell me that that's my problem. I should say no more often, but it's ingrained in me. I think my father was a bit like that. My mother and I wouldn't have been as giving, maybe. She would check people out before. She would have a real good judge of character, whereas my father would make mistakes, as I have done many times. But my father was in the Lions Club for many years, which was a charitable organisation worldwide, and he was district governor of all of Ireland. So he reached the high echelons of things like that. So he was always a giving man. Again, how he found the time to do that when he was teaching. He was headmaster is the top of your career, and that takes up, it's not just easy because you've got everybody to worry about, As he said, if you actually put what he did into the terms of commercial, he would have been on probably £500,000 a year, because he's got maybe 20 of a staff to worry about. And he's also got 300-400 kids whose results depend on what he decides. And he has the school to manage, and again, being a school teacher, he has to manage the accounts for that school. There was no accountant in his day to do that. He had to make sure that everything he can was balanced. So he was the accountant for 300 odd people plus 20 management staff. As vice principal, he had to make sure it was happy and got the books that they needed to do. Now, if you take that to working in a factory of 200 or 300 people and turning out people, and it's more important to turn out good quality kids. So, really, when you think of what a headmaster and teacher put up, their salary should be through the roof, But he didn't do it. It was a vocation for him and something he got great pleasure out of. And to this day, I know people he was taught by still hold him very favourably, and have never a bad word to say about him. And I meet lots of them, because obviously when I went to Inst, a lot of the kids that he would have taught at Inchmarlow would have been above me at school, and never once have I ever said they didn't like my father. And I don't just think it's because of my connection to him. They could easily say, "Oh, your father gave me hell," but I've never heard one person yet say that. So that's a lovely thing to be able to say about him.
Absolutely. Well, who do you
But
take
yes,
more
the
after
giving
you?
thing. Sorry, yes,
Yeah.
I know. The giving thing is something I do. Yeah, I probably have a problem with that. I should wind my neck in and say no sometimes. But again, I suppose it goes through opening those doors. If I didn't say yes, I wouldn't have got those opportunities. I would say there's very few people have had those opportunities like me. Well, I'm an amateur at most of this, but yet I'm treated as a professional by these guys, which is, and I do treat it professionally. Don't take me wrong. I wouldn't go on a stage. I wouldn't go without feeling I can do that job as well as anybody else. But yeah, who would imagine I would operate with those sort of people? Van Morrison, George Jones, and the show band shows. I still tour. I roadie for 2 bands at the moment as well, an Elvis tribute and a Smokey tribute as well. And that's going to open different doors. But yes, it's taking the opportunity. Sometimes I should say no, but yeah. The famous thing, I've got friends who ask me, the first thing they say to me, "Peter, can you?" And I say, "Yes." No. They say, no. You have to wait till what it is first. But I usually jump in with, "Yeah, of course I can." Because I usually find that I can. The sad thing is they don't always reciprocate. And that's probably what gets me sometimes. But I would say I very seldom say no to anybody. But yet, if I pick the phone and say, "Would you be able to do something for me?" It doesn't often come back. But then maybe you learn to say no to them, or not say yes to them as often.
Well, very true. Just out of curiosity, do you take more after your mother or your father, or what way would you be?
That's good. I suppose the openness of my father and the helpfulness of my father would be, I wouldn't be as studious, obviously, as my dad, because he did what he did. Although I would be more willing to learn now, funnily enough. And I still struggle to learn techniques and sales, maybe. I don't like being told no. So therefore, it goes back and all the way through my career and what I've done, things that I can do myself are easy, if that makes sense. Like tightrope walking. I can do that because it's me, it's my legs, it's my feet. Nobody can say no to me because I'm challenging myself. I'm not challenging my brain or anything. Learning to ride a unicycle, if that guy across the road can do it, I can do it. But that doesn't always transfer to doing book work, if that makes sense. I still struggle with people maybe learning to do sales and taking the no. There's no in me getting on a trampoline. There's no in me getting on a bicycle. There's no in me learning how to surf. There's no in me kite surfing or paragliding, because that's me. The only risk is me breaking a leg. But hey, well, that's not always the worst thing in the world. Or I suppose killing myself. But that's me. The other side, if you understand, hopefully that explains and I think that's been my educational problem, is that I find the learning side is struggling, whereas learning physically isn't a problem to me.
Mm. Out of curiosity, I mean, how would you have what advice would you have given to your younger self, and what would you have done?
I think just what we've discussed would be more of what I would go back to say. You are better than you think. Don't underestimate your abilities, because you have a great many of them, and I suppose I still underestimate those abilities. And if I didn't have the abilities that I have shown to others, I maybe haven't shown them to myself yet, but if I didn't have the ability to do the interview for Liverpool Building Society, they must have seen something in me, because they don't suffer fools. They know exactly what they were looking for. If I didn't have the ability to get the job as in the drawing office of a Pog and Paul kitchen company, I showed him something which I had. If I hadn't been able to show Peter the ability to help doing a show, and then the stage management side. So I would go back to myself in those days and say, look, whatever comes, you do have the ability to do it. Don't be frightened. And if somebody says no to you, it's not you they're saying no to. It's no to that offer at that time. But they might say yes later. So don't take it as an insult to you, which I probably would have done. And that's maybe why in sales I wouldn't have reached the targets levels I should have achieved, because I would have taken that to heart. But it was the price isn't right of that BMW, or, you can't compete with the guy down the road. That wasn't my fault. It was simply my employers wouldn't go that extra to get that sale. So that wasn't me. But I suppose I read into that, oh no, he's refusing to do that deal with me. So go back then and say, listen, don't worry about the no's. Accept them as not you, not the person, just a situation at that time. And don't be so hard on yourself. You have the ability. Go for it. Thank goodness I did go for it, shall we say. I certainly go for it. And I still will go for it. But maybe have more belief in my ability, which I still look at others and think, no, I couldn't do that,
Mm-hmm. That's amazing. It really is. I'm curious to know almost, what for you would stand out as some of your proudest moments, that, the sort of key things.
I think certainly setting up in business with the bins, because way back in the day, people said, "Oh, that's not going to work. That's not going to work." And again, I suppose that is the one thing that I showed tenacity in, was believing that I could do it. Other people did it. Nobody's doing it, so let's get it done. So yes, again, the achievement with helping my wife set up her Paws Doggy Daycare, although I'm on a very small part of that, it was all down to her. That was a great achievement. I captained the third rugby team to winning the cup and the shield at the end of that year, so 2 trophies. I dropped the drop goal to win it in extra time. So, although I do argue that the opposition trying to charge it down actually knocked it over the bar. I think that's what happened, really. It wasn't me who actually kicked it over. I think they actually threw it over by trying to charge it down. So that was a great achievement, because it was a hard year, and we thought out of the box in our training schemes and things. So that was great fun. We used actually the local school gym, Estonians because we couldn't train. The weather was so bad that year that we just weren't able to train on the pitches. So I rang the school and they gave us permission to go and use the school gym in the evening. And that was turned into great fun because we played crab football, five-a-side football. We were training, and then we went to the pub afterwards. So that got us a team together of a great teamship together and camaraderie, and that developed onto the pitch where we had an amazing year, coming up in the trophy and winning. So that would be a great achievement and a great feeling of success. Meeting my wife and marrying her was another great achievement for taking me on, with all my foibles. So I think that was another great achievement. And I'm looking for the next one. I don't know where it's coming from, but yeah, I'm looking for another. So whatever comes on. I'm working on stage management and those small achievements, like working backstage and with Van Mars. And that's a small achievement in its own way of getting the phone call to do that, because I always say have to have, for them to feel they have the ability to do that. And the same with Peter, for him to feel he's because he could pick anybody. Like, he's worked with so many people over the years, it wouldn't be hard for him to find somebody, so I get great pleasure out of doing that and coming up with the ideas, and even going back to the achievement of making that knife throwing act. That was a small achievement. It would give me great pleasure to hear the audience woo and ah when that worked. There's nights it didn't work, but when that apple fell off that person's head, as it looked as somebody had cut it, and the ooze from the audience when it happened, that was brilliant. Just that small, but boy, did that give you a kick.
I'm just curious, have you ever been in front of the curtain? Is it always behind?
No, I have sung and danced on the Opera House stage. I did a show called 42nd Street where I had to learn dance routines and tap routines. I can learn routines, that's easy, but if you couldn't call me a tap dancer, or you couldn't call me a dancer, but I can learn routines and do that. I get great pleasure. I'd love to do more of it. I'd love to maybe go to acting school and get a bit more. I've also worked as extras in Game of Thrones and Line of Duty and things like that. I put myself down as an extra. So that opens other doors of meeting, again, on set, I just love sitting and talking, because you don't know who you're going to meet, so that opens other avenues that I might meet somebody. You might not, but there's the one time when you might, and you get a chance to talk to some of the actors. You don't ever encroach on them, but if they're prepared to have a chat, excuse me, then you can. And you just learn the nuances of being an extra and having worked backstage with Peter, then I knew that straight away. I know the things you can't do in that situation. You don't go up and ask for autographs, and you don't sort of sit there and whatever. So there's wee things you learn, but yeah, that's great fun to do. And so yes, I've been on the Kelly show. I worked through an agent. A friend of mine has an agency in Belfast called Style Academy, a model agency, and I firmly quickly say I'm not a model. So, but she also does some TV ads and stuff. So I remember one of the real funny ones was the Kelly show. Do you remember doing the Kelly did his own TV show for many, many years?
Yes, I do indeed.
So they were looking for a stooge to do that. It's funny that my connections are just so wide. But anyway, I said, yes, I'll do it. So the idea was that I met May McFettridge beforehand, and we planned what we were going to do. So she was going down. It was a hairdresser in the middle of Carrickfergus, whose birthday was coming up, 40th or 50th birthday, and they wanted to set her up. So basically, I was the stooge to go in. There was only one other hairdresser knew that I was a wind-up, and I was given blood capsules. And the idea that May McFettridge would come in and say, this job's dead easy. Sure, anybody could do this. Pull the scissors off her and come and cut my hair. And of course, he would then cut mine this side, and all of a sudden, bang, oh my God, I'm sorry. I would put my hands to my ear and slap the blood all over my ear. And of course, panic would ensue. So that's what we did, and we set it up perfectly. And this girl came in and she fell to the floor. I turned around, blood over my hand, blood over my ears. We thought she was going to pass out until May took control and said, we're only kidding, we're only winding you up. So that was fun. That went out on the show that night. But what also transcribed was that if they had known beforehand, they wouldn't have used me, because it worked out that my brother-in-law's cousin was the owner of the hairdressing salon, and she was the one we were setting up. So if there was any chance that she might have found out who I was, then it probably wouldn't have worked. But she didn't. She wouldn't have known me from Adam anyway. But they wouldn't have used me if that connection had been put. So So it just shows you have too many. Sometimes too many connections can be a bad thing in Northern Ireland when you don't know too many people.
Oh wow, that's amazing. That'll be great fun. Sounds like great fun anyway.
Okay, it was. I keep looking for the clip, maybe on YouTube somewhere to see if I can find it. I did have it for a while, but yeah. And then the other one was I was asked to do an ad for down south when they were doing the X Factor. So they had 4 of us lined up, and I played the part of Louis Walsh in a quick thing for that. So I've done 2 or 3 of those. So yeah. Again, if the door opens, I'll say yes.
Yeah, great fun. Just out of curiosity, what would you say your core values are then?
I think it goes back to, again, integrity, and goes back to treating people with respect. And, if you go through life treating people with respect, then the likelihood is they'll treat you with the same. And I think sales and anything that I've done, I show rapport with the client. And again, working backstage, and on those shows that I've done, it's very much a people person. And being a people person comes to rapport. Core values would be, don't try and stitch somebody up, because you only get away with that for so long. And Northern Ireland's too small. You get too well known for being the other side. I'd far rather be known for being the good guy and the nice guy and the guy who's going to help. And again, I honestly believe that's opened the doors that is open for me, is showing that I can do the job. And if I can't, I'll get it done. And showing that I have a rapport with people. I think that's sort of my core values. And trying to be as gentlemanly as I can on my way through life. I'd like somebody to think, when it's all over and my headstone will show, I'd love it to sort of think, he tried everything, had fun doing it, and was a gentleman. That would be quite nice to leave,
Absolutely. I'm curious, would you say that you like yourself or love yourself?
It's a difficult question. I think everybody is capable of improving. I said before that I consider this as my university education, is going through life and going through those. I keep using this term doors, or saying yes, or whatever you want to describe it, but that's my university education. And when I'm dead and gone, that's probably the day I'll be graduating, and it'll be for those who come after me to decide whether I graduate with full honours or just a simple degree. How else do I describe it? Sorry, what was the question again? I know I go off on these tangents.
No, I was just curious to know, and I suppose it's as much to talk about, whether inner critic and inner language, but, would you say that you like yourself or love yourself?
I wouldn't say I love myself, because I have faults. I don't think any of us would be human if we didn't have faults. All I can do, you'd probably better ask my wife, and she would tell you the truth, unfortunately. And my friends as well. I think probably one of my faults is I say yes too often, and don't always think of the consequences. And there are consequences to everything, but it's mitigating them as best you can. I would have my faults, yes, and saying yes too often. I need to think, and hopefully I learn from my faults as I go. I'll have more faults, I would imagine, I think the best you can do in life is reducing them as you go. And I probably will never get rid of them all. And again, would we be human if we didn't? And would we be the character or the person we are if we didn't have those foibles? It's like somebody with a disfigurement or anything, or any disability. They are those people because of that. And most of them, if you ask, would never want to go back and not have that disability or disfigurement, because that would change the person they are. So I think I am the person I am with my faults. And hopefully the good side of me is better than the fault side.
Love it. I love it. So tell me this, in one or a few words, what is your fire in the belly?
Excitement as to what's next is going to be coming. The coronavirus has opened doors to options, working with the Outstanding Network, which again I would suggest anybody listening to this has the opportunity to involve themselves with, do so. You have nothing again losing by doing it. It'll open doors that you may not have thought open for you. And again, advise anybody is to try that door. I'm looking forward to the next one I'm going to open, but don't close it behind you. Leave it open, leave it a bit ajar, knowing you can go back. But please try it. You'd never know the excitement. Like if you just have half the excitement I've had of some of those doors that open for me, just simply by saying, okay, I'll have a go. That's been brilliant, you know, and I hope there's a lot more to come.
Absolutely. Well, obviously, unicycle is God knows where that's going to take you.
I'll let you know how that goes.
Peter, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on. I love the stories, and it's been so great. And
no, it's been a great pleasure for me to reminisce and probably reflect on maybe I'm not just as bad as I think I am, you know. So that's cathartic, and that helps as well. So
absolutely,
yeah.
Listen, it's a cathartic process, and it's great to see your language and your excitement, and there's so many great things ahead. So listen, I thank you again, and I look forward to hearing how the unicycling and everything else goes. So
I promise I'll let you know. Take care, everybody, and stay safe. Thanks talking to you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.